Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Endless Celts Podcast. I hope you're all well who's watching along and also going to catch up via YouTube and other social media platforms and audio platforms. But this is going to be our end of season review, where we just took a wee walk down the season, just kind of talk through key points and the things that happened during the season that might have contributed to Celtic being the league and cup double winning champions. But first of all, I'm joined by Ross. How are you?
Not bad, mate. The sounds went a bit funny, but apart from that, I'm good. Ready to
Can
talk.
you hear me okay?
It's very, very muffled. I don't know what the deal is with it. It's all my connections are in and that, like, but
Oh, my connection's in. I mean, just before we come on air, I was talking to you about my connection. Can you hear me now?
you are aye.
Can you hear me now?
It's really low. I've turned the volume up my pad, but I don't know. I can hear you anyway. It's just not as
Right,
clear as normal, but
right. We'll
aye,
get
I'm
there.
good. Ready to talk
Good
all
man.
things last season.
I know it just went in a blink of an eye. Such a weird season, but we are delighted on the Endless Celts podcast that we've been able to draft in Ryan 118. Or sorry, should I mean our very own James? How you doing, buddy?
I'm brilliant, Stevie, mate.
Wow, that's
and do
incredible.
you think that was pre-planned? Nah. Looking forward to it, mate. Looking forward to having a couple of beers and a good laugh.
And just on the off chance, can you hear me okay?
Aye, I can hear you fine, mate.
So it's Ross's fault then. Must be them dodgy earphones. But
That's something. I'm going to take the earphones out and see if that makes a difference.
But we're delighted. We're delighted to be joined by Paul McFarlane's in, Chris Toff is in, Thomas Burns is in already, and Stephen Merck as well. So, look, I mean, I want us to kind of go back to the start. And again, we know the season's over, but as I said, it's the review, James. And I want us to be honest. I want this to be an open floor in the comments. I want it to be an open floor and people get involved. Obviously, when Postecoglou moved on, by the way, I called that very early on in the 2023 turn of the year. I was very adamant that he was going to move on. And, it eventually happened, much like other things that I've predicted, but I don't like to harp on about it. But, James, Postecoglou did leave the club after the infamous Scottish Cup final when he led us to a treble. And then there was all the who's going to come in. We done a podcast on here, myself and Ross, you might have been involved, and a few others about incoming managers. And funny enough, Kieran McKenna, hot property in England, was mentioned, Enzo Maresca at Areola, I believe, and there's a guy who was mentioned who's now is it manager of one of the big clubs in Portugal. I can't remember his name, but I think you said it the other week, James, in the chat. But Brendan Rodgers came out of nowhere. Basically, no one had him in their minds. He was looking to take a year out, and if we're led to believe it being true, Cal McGregor and him had a chat in Mallorca. He met up with Michael Nicholson, and he, by the way, going by that Sky Sports show, he wasn't initially drawn in by Michael Nicholson. It was Dermot Desmond who made the telephone call, and then Cal McGregor went over to kind of seal the deal, and then Brendan Rodgers came back to what's that chant now to lead the green and white. So, how did you feel at that moment in time? And I mean, first of all, let's have to take a wee peek at him. So there's the man of the hour hit there, Brendan Rodgers. But how did you feel at the time when his name is being linked and announced? And as I said, be honest, because we're at the end of the season, a successful one,
No, I was happy enough. I said it on here. I said it in the Jungle Gyms as well prior. He was on my list. He wasn't top of my list, but I wasn't one of the ones kind of dead set against him for leaving the way that he done, leaving in the way that he did. Sorry. So no, I always fancied the idea of Graham Potter. Whether or not that was ever even remotely possible is a different thing, but I always liked the idea of Graham Potter. One that even at the time I took a kind of fair few pelters for was Jesse Marsh. I actually quite like Jesse Marsh. I think you've got to have something to come through the kind of Red Bull setup. You don't get many Diddies coming through there. So to be honest, they two, maybe no Jesse Marsh so much. That was always maybe a wee bit an outside shout, but definitely Graham Potter. As far as I can remember, I think was my number one choice. But Brendan Rodgers, when the kind of story broke and he was available and that we were going out to Spain to try and tempt him in and things like that, as I say, I was on board with it. obviously the way the summer played out will be something that we'll come on to discuss. But I don't think that's anything that really any of us could have foreseen in terms of the transfer front. As I say, I know we'll touch on that. But no, at that point, everything was rosy in the garden for me, at least. Anyway, I was happy enough with Rodgers coming in, although he wasn't my first pick. I mean, how often are you going to get your first kind of choice pick? But no, I was happy enough, and I think, like you've mentioned there, pretty much every single manager that we were linked with, and one of the ones I was dead against was Enzo Maresca, but every single one of them has been on to have a successful season somewhere, right as far down as that Des Buckingham that was here on a stag do and was linked to the Celtic job. But every single one of them's had a great season, so we must be doing something right at some level somewhere anyway.
Recruiting managers seems to be a thing we're certainly look good at the moment, Ross. And James mentioned Des Buckingham. It was funny. I remember there was a rumour because he was on a plane to Glasgow. The Cats had connected flight. I think it was down to London. And automatically, I think myself and probably Franny were jumping on it going, how the fuck is he going to be the new Celtic manager? What the fuck's this? Going mad about it. And like what James said there about Enzo Maresca, there was plenty of times in this podcast where this guy managed at Parma. He had like 8 or 9 games. Remember, John became a Serie B expert and was able to tell all the stats. But you know, I mean, looking that far back now, as James rightly said, every manager we're linked to has done a good job, right down to Des Buckingham. What a name, by the way. But in regards to Brendan Rodgers, where were you sitting when he was first linked, and also it was confirmed and it was breaking in the news he was the new manager again?
Well, first of all, I'd completely forgot about Des Buckingham, so thanks for reminding us of that, James. That was a stormer, I remember that. But in terms of Rodgers, he was my first choice. I know, obviously, everybody was, well, not everybody, but there was people that were on the fence and people that were dead against it because of what had happened previously. But for me, it was, listen, I didn't like it at the time, and Sharon, my wife, has said to me on numerous occasions that you hated him when he left and that, and now he's all the rest of it. I'm like, but I did, for a brief period, I was raging because it was mid-season, and that season could have then went tits up, but it didn't, because Neil Lennon came in and he steadied the shit and he saw us through. But, I mean, after, I don't know, a few months, it might have been longer than that, I can't mind exactly, but you sort of let it go. And then I was watching him doing really well down at Leicester, and he won an FA Cup, and as we've spoke about, he got 2 or 3 fifth-place finishes, which is unheard of, apart from Leicester's title-winning season. It's unheard of for that club. So when it was muted that he was sort of possibly going to come back to Celtic, there was nobody else for me. And I know James has obviously touched on
that be really gassy.
Aye, it is, aye. You see it, I was like, could feel it coming up there, and I was like, is that coming or no there? But aye, James has touched on Jesse Marsh. He'll no be surprised to find out that I was absolutely dead against that. I watched him at Leeds. Listen, I totally take your point, James, in the sense that there's no idiots come through the Red Bull setup. But for me, I never seen much of him at that club. But at Leeds, it was poor for me. It was he was scrambling in that league, and I know it's a higher level and stuff like that. And Leeds were in disarray when he came in anyway. But I was against that. I was 100% against Enzo Maresca, because I just think that people now, after Arteta went into Arsenal and done well, having worked under Guardiola, I think that everybody seems to think that it's the default setting that if you've worked under him, you're going to be an absolute tremendous manager. And listen, that was without the benefit of hindsight. He has went into Leicester and he's done a tremendous job. Did he deserve the Chelsea job off the back of it? Probably not, but this is the way of modern football. But for me, out of all the candidates, it was only Brendan Rodgers. Again, James spoke about Graham Potter. he's a manager I like, a manager I rate. Had Brendan Rodgers not been available, he would have probably been my first choice. But because Brendan Rodgers was available, and albeit we came off the back of a treble, there's still that change, and you need somebody to come in and steady the ship, if you like, that isn't rocking too much, but you've still got to oversee that change. And for me, Rodgers was the man to do it. And when he came in, listen, I listen to TalkSport every day anyway, but I usually listen to it to about 1 o'clock, and then it goes on to like Hawksby and Baker or something like that, and they're absolute chronic. But I was even sitting like at my work listening to them, just waiting for that announcement that Rodgers was going to be the new manager. I was desperate. I can remember the job I was on when it was announced, and it was like brushed in on the phone. Oh, I was absolutely delighted when he came in, and I'm still delighted that he is our manager. And I still, like, when he does press conferences and that, I'm like, we have got him back at this club again. I've said it before, he's a top level manager, he really is. And for to get him twice in the league that we play in, we wouldn't have got him had he not been a Celtic fan, a massive Celtic fan. And that is why we've got him for a second time, and I'm absolutely delighted. And there's nobody that I would want at the helm at Celtic. Listen, obviously I'm talking within our budget and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you could get Guardiola or whatever, it would be tremendous. But within our budget, right now, there's nobody I would want more at the helm than Brendan Rodgers.
It was more like brush down, trunks down, I'd say, with you, Ross, on that job. Do you know what I mean? But strange enough, the doctor comes in. I was devastated when Hans moved on. He played the best football I've ever seen at Celtic, and I mentioned I didn't see how we could replace him. Brendan has done okay, but his football is nowhere close. We'll definitely come on to kind of all the twists and turns and the media narrative and the fans kind of getting on the back of the club. We'll come on to that shortly. As I said, strap in. It's going to be probably a longish show. We'll see how we go. But I do want to come right back at. Go ahead, sorry.
So just off the back of that comment, listen, I totally agree with what you said there, but I loved Ange. I still love Ange. I think he's probably my favourite Celtic manager in terms of how he carried himself off the field, and his football was exquisite. But I feel like people are judging Brendan Rodgers against Ange Postecoglou because he's followed him. But if he hadn't followed him in the same vein as, like, say, Martin O'Neill, even Gordon Strachan, these guys had success at the club, and their style of football is never compared to Ange's. But because Brendan's followed them, it's always compared, and I feel it's unfair, and it just shouldn't be, because Brendan's come in, he's won a double. Listen, and it's not been great football, and it's not even been as good football as the previous time he was here. But this comparing it to Ange's style needs to stop. See, once he starts, like, going into next season, if he's backed how we hope he is backed, within reason, he'll play better football, and we will be a better team under Brendan Rodgers next season. I have no doubt about that. Will we play the same brilliant football that Ange played? Probably not, because there's slight tweaks, there's a slight different style. Aye, no, I totally get that, but I'm not disagreeing with you as such, but I'm just saying we need to get away from this comparing Ange and Rodgers' style, because they're not exactly the same. They play at a different pace, but if they still get the same end goal, and that is trophies, that's all I care about.
Well, I mean, we do have to be basking in success, James. I mean, we've won trophy after trophy, and another era of domestic dominance, and people are calling it, seems to be on the horizon. But one thing that does get questioned about Brendan Rodgers, and you can't really ignore it. And look, a lot of people on platforms or media are rewriting history and saying Rodgers is the next great thing again, but forgetting what he'd done the first time and left us to go to Leicester mid-season. He was actually at his last game. It was against Motherwell, and he apparently already had his suit and all ordered, and all that kind of thing that you hear previously. But a person came up in the media recently, and I said it is a refusal, but I think it's just fitting to kind of go away from Rodgers here in a second. But Ali McCoist questioned his loyalty recently, and questioned if he would be at Celtic for the long term. Do you see a stark difference in Rodgers the second time than he was the first time, being a wee bit more naive and younger, and probably more kind of driven towards money, where now he said he wants to come back and build that legacy and see out the 3 years? Do you believe that will happen, or are you still of the same kind of train of thought? If he gets an opportunity again, he might consider it?
If I'm being totally honest, I think if the opportunity, or the right opportunity, was to arise, at the end of the day, money talks, bullshit walks, as they say. But I definitely, I've went for a space a couple of months ago. There was genuine discussions whether or no he would be here, whether that was our choice or his choice. I definitely think he'll be here next season, but I think it'd be pretty naive to say, no, he said he's going to be here for 3 years, so he'll be here for 3 years. Even in his stint here, the second time round, he's said a lot of stuff, which isn't really bore out in fact. But no, I think he'll definitely be here next season. We'll say that the Leicester job's up for available now. I don't think they've got a new manager, so I suppose maybe no. But no, I think he'll definitely be here next season. But if the right opportunity was to arise for him down south, I think it'd be very, very naive to say, to take him at his word, to be honest, in terms of he said he'd be here for 3 years, so he'll be here for 3 years.
I mean, for me anyway, like, before coming to yourself, Ross, on that one, because I know Ali McCoy and pundits have their saying, and people's in high positions, obviously, within Scottish football. But going back to my feelings when Rodgers was linked and announced, I think I was pretty, I would say, clear on my assessment at the time that I didn't think it would be the correct move. I'm pretty sure it was that. But obviously, as time goes on, and you see us, as you both have said, double winning, and it's the same kind of end game of winning trophies, you kind of warmed to it again. I was more coming from the fact, Ross, that again, the loyalty side of things and how he left the first time, and there was a lot of support, and probably still is, that think that same way. Yes, we can bask in the glory, we can bask in the trophies and the fancy speeches and Celtic Way being packed with thousands of fans, but there's still some people who have the element of doubt in their head, and rightly so, by the way. Let's not pretend that it didn't happen, because it did happen. We can call him out for all the great things he's managed to get through this season, injuries and squad, personnel, your favourite word. But at the end of the day, that did happen in the history books, and some people still question it. And as I said recently, a couple of pundits come out and have said it publicly, but probably because it's sour grapes, because their team didn't manage a single victory against us in 5 games. But where do you stand on it at this particular moment?
Well, first of all, I think personnel is going to be on my gravestone. Live by the sword, you die by it. But what was the question there?
So is loyalty. The people are still questioning that aspect of Rodgers coming back the second time. So that's where I'm coming with that one there.
Aye. Well, listen, I don't know about Brendan Rodgers' loyalty.
We need to dumb me again.
I know. It wasn't there the first time around, clearly. We can't argue with that. I'm going to have to be Mr. Naive, I think, James. Because for me, and the reason why I say it, I think he will be here for the 3 years, and I totally understand, again, why you say what you've said. But maybe I am naive, but I feel like Brendan Rodgers he's came back to Celtic. Obviously, he's not just came back like, I want to come back. He's had to have conversations and make sure everything was right for him. By the way, that is gassy, fucking hell.
That's proper gassy. It's getting to you, isn't it?
I know.
It has you rattled.
It's not to do with the Tandoori Mix Grill I've just consumed either, like. But
well, I fucking ate it.
I had a second plate. But where was I? He's the reason I say that I'm going to be naive here, maybe, and the reason I say that I think he'll be here for the 3 years is because he left Celtic the way he did, and we all seen it. But I feel like he feels like he was starting to get eradicated for Celtic's history, even though what went before what he'd done, what was it, 7 trophies? And I feel like he's like he is a big Celtic supporter, and he's realised in time, and as you said, Stephen, getting a bit older and realising I think he's at a stage in his career now where he's done the England thing, and he's done a really good job, by the way. For the most part, he done a really good job at Liverpool. He done a fantastic job at Swansea. For me, up until the last maybe 6 months at Leicester, I thought he'd done a fantastic job there. And then he's probably sitting back now and looking at guys like Maresca, Vincent Kompany, guys like that getting these big jobs that haven't done in the game what he has done as a manager. And he's probably thinking to himself, I'm not going to get a job like that again after the Leicester debacle at the end. And I think he's at a stage in his career where he's quite comfortable in his own skin and he's quite settled at Celtic. I feel like it looks like the way he finished the season. Listen, I know it wasn't great what we watched on the eye for the most part, but that last sort of 10 to 12 games, I thought we started to come into our own. We really played some really good stuff, and it was Brendan Rodgers stuff at times. I just feel like he's quite comfortable, and he knows that if he goes in the same way as he did the last time, and he doesn't see out this contract at the very least, then the same murmurings, the same narrative will start again, and he won't have changed anything, albeit that he's won the 2 trophies. Whatever he wins next season, if he goes, and it's not even mid-season, but he goes at the end of next season, I don't know, having done a treble, the Celtic fans, for me, will still, or a lot of them will still go, well, you still left. You still went back at the first opportunity to go back to England. You still done it. I just think, I honestly think, he said that when he came back that unless I get emptied, and for spells, people did think he was going to get emptied before the end of this season. And I didn't think he should have, but even I thought at one point, maybe he is going to get emptied here, and it's just one of the ones you just shouldn't go back to a club. Everybody says it. It never works out second time around. But in the end, this season it did. And I think for me, at the very least, he'll see out his 3-year contract. And I honestly believe if he is successful, I could see him going further than that. Again, it might be naive. I'm not saying that will happen, but I could see it happen.
See, to be fair, I actually tend to agree with you. Surprise, you come
into the kind of... What happened there?
What I was going to say is you're coming at it for the positive point of view, and I'm looking at it more for the negative. Surprise. But what you're saying there, I would take that to be, in terms of his reputation in England, his stock in England would never have been lower than it is currently. So, what opportunities are going to arise for him? He's not going to really get a kind of big job as such.
But James, I think it's sorry, but I think it's crazy that you say that when a manager got relegated with Burnley has got the Bayern Munich job. Aye. So the world of manager recruitment at the minute is bump. It's crazy. Well,
to be fair, that kind of ties in with what I was just about to say as well, because excuse me, fucking that's gassy, I know. When Rodgers came in the first time, it took a relatively poor Liverpool team to basically a ball here away from winning the league. As you say, done really well at Swansea. So at that point, it was a really big coup for us to get him in. I think everybody at that point was kind of expecting it to be David Moyes. Certainly myself, I was David Moyes, and Rodgers was my kind of pie in the sky appointment. And to be fair, we pulled it off and we brought him in. But when he left Celtic, and look, it overall, and probably, well, obviously can't speak on behalf of Leicester fans. It's not as if I watch him week in, week out, but I dare say with the benefit of hindsight, a lot of them would say done a good job. But I think that last kind of 6 months that he was there, it'll kind of linger. Pretty much in the same way this like he left here, it does linger. It leaves that kind of bitter taste in the mouth when he's away. But I think he's kind of damaged goods, so to speak, down there. And look, we've seen it with Ange as well. Ange came into Celtic totally. I mean, you look at where we were when he came in to where we were when he left. He won 5 trophies out of 6. totally reinvented the club essentially in terms of playing staff, style of play, even to an extent in the boardroom as well. It was as if he was doing 10 different jobs, and he left, and to be fair, he left to one of the big six in England, but he was still about fucking 10th choice for Spurs. So it just shows you how much the English look down their nose at achievements up here. So if Rodgers' reputation down south is at the lowest it's ever been, if he comes up here and he wins everything and does it fantastically well, what opportunities are going to arise for him? So I agree with what you're saying, and I suppose we're just coming at it from different angles, but I still think if the right job came up for him down south, then he would go to it. But I think that's probably a bit of a stretch now, just with how it ended at Leicester for him last year.
By the way, see to come back on that as well. See, in terms of if the right job came up, I'm no naive enough to think if a top 6 team came in, like say Chelsea have went for Maresca, if Chelsea came in for Brendan Rodgers, I don't doubt for a second that he would have to explore that opportunity, and an opportunity like that, I wouldn't begrudge him. I really wouldn't. But if he went to a Brighton or something like that, the end of next season, I'd be like, nah. But I would be surprised if it happened as well. But again, I have to admit that if he goes on and wins another double or a treble, his stock will rise in England the same way, because when he left Liverpool, his stock had went down a wee bit. Obviously not as low as when he left Leicester, but if you go and do well at Celtic, in much the same way as Ange Postecoglou, listen, nobody expected him to get as big a job in terms of where Tottenham are in that league, usually, off the back of Celtic. But if Ange Postecoglou can get that, then you never know. But his stock, if he does a good job next season again, his stock will rise in England again. There'll be clubs looking at him, but it'll be clubs, well, not Leicester, but clubs off that ilk, a Brighton, maybe a Southampton, a Bournemouth, something like that. Do you know what I mean? And I still think he'll see out the 3 years, but I could be being really naive. I understand that, and I'm not saying that he definitely wouldn't go, but for me, I think he will see it out for the reasons I stated earlier.
Yeah, no, I can get both sides of the argument there. Mr. Dunn has chose silence tonight. The North Curve's tweet the day he was announced was nothing short of a disgrace. He's returned and picked up from where he left off. Another 2 trophies and 1 defeat in 18 in the derby, which is a fantastic record. But then, Anthony, you can't come on to the group chat and say their tifos are biblical and the atmosphere that creates amazing. So, pick your side and stick to it a wee bit. And Anthony Dunn again, section of our support need to stop acting like they jumped the bread at the altar. He made his decision and that was that. He addressed it when he returned it, and that should be the end of the matter. Again, he's outside arguing with the clouds. Strains of the doctor. Anthony, I think the North Curve are entitled to make their own fuss, just knowing like you are. And no violence, Captain, just facts. But like everyone is entitled to their own opinion. It's all a bit of a laugh, obviously. But Ross, you mentioned the fact that Rodgers needed convincing that things are right within the club. And as I said, we're taking a bit of a dive into the kind of the season gone by here. Going to look at summer recruitment, different games. So we'll start with the summer transfer window. And we're 29 minutes in. Yes, we'll have to.
No,
we'll have to, right? So you spoke about Rodgers having them conversations with people who are high up on the board, blah, 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 saying that he wanted to make sure things are right. But first of all, I want to take a look at the transfers out of the club, okay? So as you can see here, Jada left for a substantial fee. Lila Bala eventually left in January. Carl Starfelt left. Turnbull, Itaguchi, Albanieri, Hazard and Barkas, and underneath that there was a few youth players who left the club. And if we look at transfers in, now again the writing gets smaller, but that's Naraki comes in, Palma, Nicholas Kuhn, January, Lagerbielke, Thiago Home, Yang came in, Tilio, Kwan, Awada on his loan deal was made a permanent, Paulo Bernardo on loan from Benfica, and Adam Ida, which will come on to Kuhn and Ida individually when we get to the January window. But you did say that he had them conversations about things being right. Now, we can look back now by hindsight. We can look back at the comments saying recruitment was worlds apart from when he first was at the club, and all them years ago till now. Obviously, Mark Lawwell was in place. He eventually was let go of his duties after the January transfer window, and thank fuck, because he was an absolute useless whatever. But where do you, I mean, you look back at that transfer window now, and I have to give it to you. You said give the players time. We give them time, and the majority of them are still shit. So, was he convinced the things were? Was he convinced the things were right? What did he think he was coming in a good situation, or do you think he was maybe seeing these deals were probably near across the line and going to give him the chance, because that's probably what they would have signed if Postecoglou was still there? Where do you stand now, looking back on that window?
Well, when he came in and he done, I don't know if it was his first press conference, it was one of the early ones anyway. He talked about the structure and how it was much better. And listen, in terms of the structure, he can look at the positions and the different, that there might be more people in different positions that he would have wanted first time around, more bodies in the team. That might have been what he was talking about in terms of structure. Might not have been, well, listen, that's him coming in, and on the face of it, the structure in the team and how it's built maybe looks good, but as time went on, the guys who are part of that structure, I'm trying to see how to explain this. So the structure looks good, but the sort of
way you done that, the structure looks good.
Aye, but what I'm trying to say is, so if you're looking at a building, right, the structure might look good, but see if the bits of wood and stuff are holding it up are actually a wee bit rotten. It might look good to look at, but after a wee while it'll crumble, and it won't last as long as it should. It makes sense in my head, but I think maybe that's what he's seen. But then as times went on, the guys that are actually doing the job in that structure are not doing it properly. So it's as good as the setup is, if the wrong personnel, if you like, are in there doing that job, then it's not going to work. And I think he's realised through time that has been the case. And I think now we've seen, obviously, Mark Long has left his position. I don't know how many other guys have left positions, and you hope that, I've not heard many announcements that other guys have come in to take these places. But listen, at the end of the day, for me, I don't know enough about recruitment and stuff to comment on it in an informed manner. But for me, if you get a guy in who, how do I put this? It doesn't matter who it is to me, if you know what I mean. But if he's bringing in players and it works, and he's getting the right players in, then it just, I don't even know what I'm trying to say here, but I'm struggling to explain what's going on in my brain right now. But I've tied myself in knots, to be perfectly honest with you.
Are you in a roundabout way saying Rodgers is coming back, right? And the empty rooms within Lennoxtown are actually filled now with recruitment, data analysis, all that type of stuff, and it looks good on paper. Aye. But when you dig deeper into it, it's actually still as fragile as it was when he first was at the club, which led to Mark Lawwell being probably sacked. But you'll never hear that in the media.
Pretty much. On paper it looks good, but once he's been there for a period of time and he's seen the players that the guys have brought in, they guys can't do that job. We need to change that. The positions and the people that, or not the people, but the positions and the job titles that you've got and the amount of people in are a better structure, but the people you've got doing it are not doing the job right. So we need to get the proper personnel in to do the job right and make the structure that is that looks good work properly. Move on.
I'm gonna buy you a T-shirt It says personnel and structure. And that was quality.
Listen,
personnel, structure.
Absolutely. I've had a nightmare, like, absolute nightmare.
Ross, if you see logic in bringing a player who has been properly scouted and fills a gap in the squad, it feels right. Yeah, I think strange enough kind of gets your train of thought of what you're saying.
Aye.
San Fran shouldn't be laughing. You're hungover too. But James, I mean, me and you and Franny within the group and a few others were very, I would say, probably emotional when it comes to transfers. And we call it really early on. And Paul McFarlane says, "What the fuck are you talking about, Ross?" We called it really early on, and we're like, "This guy won't make it. This guy, blah blah blah." But I want to talk about his comments before we get into the actual the recruitment side and structure and personnel that Ross was talking about. Ever so delightful. But I mean, saying them comments, is that misleading the fans? Is that kind of saying that before you dive deep into what the structure? Here's me saying it. What the thing is actually in place within the club. You're nailing your colours to the mast. Then you have to back up the recruitment policy. Then you have to say give the players time. And at the end of the day, he doesn't keep his mouth shut, ran with it, and then done his changes throughout the season.
I to an extent, as I say, I'm not going to get back and rewrite history and say everything was brilliant and always supported Rodgers and everything he said or done just because we've won a double. But look, that was part of it. That's when I said earlier that he spoke nonsense basically throughout the season when it came to certain things. That at the time, I think I'm fairly confident I called out as being one of them. Look, Rodgers came in and it's essentially polishing a turd. I mean, you can throw glitter on the scouting department, but it's still shite. The Mark Lowell thing, I was never ever a fan of that. Look, people defended it. He was within the City group. I know he came in under Ange, but people defended it. He was in the City group. He was in the City group, but nobody was ever actually able to tell you nailed on exactly what his job was within the City group. He just worked for the City group in some capacity, and it never fails to amaze me. And McGinty will be sitting praising me somewhere, but it never fails to amaze me that the best man for the job of that particular job, it just so happened to be our ex-CEO, now chairman's son. And it genuinely baffles me that how people can look at that and go, no, that's a great appointment. That's a good appointment. That is literally the definition of Joe's for the boys. It is your chairman's boy. So I was never on board with that. But
don't forget the Chief Scout. Don't forget the Chief Scout was Strachan's boy.
Aye, exactly. So that's what I mean. Look, when Rodgers came in, look, it might have been different, and look, we did have a bit of a kind of restructure. But again, it's another one that I said at the time. It's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Lowell was at the door, well, allegedly at the door for 6 months, a year maximum, and then he was back in the fold. He's still in the fold. It's the same faces. They've just got a different job title. So look, there's still question marks on the boardroom for me. And like you say, Mark Lowell's left. We still don't, as far as I'm aware, have a head of recruitment or whatever you want to call it these days, if we're even in the market for one. But we were in the market for one prior to Ange, and then it took us 18 months to find the chairman's son. He's at the door, and it seems to have been forgot a bit again. So that's where questions arise for me. But that's, to be fair, that's nothing to do with Rodgers. As I say, I think he's just trying to kind of polish a turd at his unveiling press conference. But then the flip side of that as well is it arguably potentially puts a wee bit of pressure on the board that he's sent his stall out early to let us know that we need to do a bit of business, and obviously the business has to be of a certain standard, which barring Lewis Palmer, even that, to be fair, is arguable. I'm not even saying that as a wind-up, but in terms of numbers, but apart from that, our summer recruitment hasn't been great. Bernardo on loan, potentially. But
fabulous player.
But no, it's just the recruitment. The hope that you got for it was that we assumed with Rodgers coming back after him saying that he was going to be looking to take a year out, and then the whole Desmond flying to Spain to meet with him and all that kind of talk, I think it was just by and large assumed that we would splash the cash pretty much the way that a lot of people are assuming we're going to do it this summer, which I take nothing for granted with a Celtic board, but it was assumed that we were going to splash the cash last summer, and it just didn't happen. We had a fair few big links, as we've mentioned before. Livakovic, Fabian Ryder. There was the other Swiss guy that I can't mind his
Scott
name.
McTominay.
Aye, if that was ever, I think.
Podence, Daniel Podence, who's at
Podence,
Olympiacos.
And he just won the Conference League the other night. So the big kind of name links or big price tags were there, but then it was just almost like we resorted to type, and it was that kind of bargain basement that we tend to do, and whatever they'll say, you pull a Matt O'Reilly for that, and look, fair dues, every time you'll get a diamond in the rough, but I mean, you just need to bring that list up again and look through it. I mean, how many of them, in literally every summer signing, and they'll even include, as much as it pains me, they'll include Palm in it. If any of them left the Mora, would you bat an eyelid? Genuinely. Obviously, excluding Ida and Kuhn, they were signed in January. The only one on that list at all that you'd probably bat an eyelid with is Ida, and he was only on loan. So, there's...
We'll come on to him. We'll come on to Ida, don't worry.
There's a lot of work still to be done for me in that regard, and as I say, that's why I'm not going to get carried away this summer, because I was guilty of that last summer when I felt it was a given, considering the position we found ourselves in, and also obviously with Rodgers coming back.
I mean, for me, I'll be happy if Celtic bid 900,000 for Miovski and then miss out on him, and he goes to the Champions League club and scores 30 goals a season. And I'm like, oh, he's another one that got away. Do you know what I mean? But B comes in. What was it, Don Mackay? Who all about? That's one thing we'll probably never know. I think it was Steve Murdoch. Did he unsettle the board with different viewpoints? Probably did. He was kind of airbrushing history. Sam Fran came in. Palma is decent if you give him the ball to run onto. Shite from his stance in the start. Play to his strengths. No idea what his strengths are. Anton Rogan's left foot. Enough to win the league, plus a big signing this year. Paul McFarlane. Ross built the ship structure, Stephen, as the captain. Just a pity he named the Titanic. Strains of the Doctor. In hindsight, it's not been great, but the players come in with pedigree, sound judgment, in my honest opinion. Maybe given the year we've just had, we'll kick them on. Football is funny that way. Speaking of that, Ross, just before we move on to the Champions League campaign, is there any player within that list in your mind could kick on next season that hasn't potentially featured a lot this season?
I don't know about kicking on next season, but I think there's a really good player there. I think he'd maybe benefit for a loan, possibly next season, a season's loan, and then he might come back. It benefited guys like Rogic. I think there's a really good player nodding Thiago home. I think, what is he? Maybe, I can't remember exactly.
20?
20?
I think he's 20.
20. I think there's a lot of potential in there. He's a really cultured player. He's really calm on the ball. Listen, it's a hard midfield to get into, and that midfield wasn't available to us all season. But he was picked at times. But Bernardo was the one was ahead of him. But I think there's a really good player there. We paid $2.5 million, I think, for him at 19 years of age. It's a big layout. He was, whatever award that is for a young player in Europe, he won that. So listen, there's a lot of potential there in him. Put the list up again for me just so I can see if there's anybody else, because I can't remember off.
Palma.
Are you just talking about the summer ones?
Largabielka, Home, Yang, Tilio, Kwan. Awada, obviously, he's a part of the team now because of his low move. Paulo Bernardo, then we'll come on to Ida and Kuhn separately. But anyone else, you think?
You've got Navrocki there. I've not seen enough of him. He's been really hampered with injuries on and off all season. I wouldn't sell him this summer. I don't think they will anyway. I still think we need another centre half to come in. I don't know if he is the one to be that. He might prove me wrong. He's certainly worthy. At least another season to try and prove his worth. But I would still be going out and trying to get somebody else in. And if you can't, if we get somebody else in who's really good and he can't oust him, then he's not good enough for Celtic because he can't oust the man that's in front of him. And he wasn't able to do that with Liam Scales at times, albeit, as I've said, he was hampered with injuries. I like Lagerbielke, what I've seen him. I think he's a decent player. I actually probably like him more than I like Nawrocki. I think he's not blessed with the best pace, but I don't think he's slow. But I think he's going to go. I don't think Brendan Rodgers fancies him. But obviously, me and Brendan Rodgers like different types of defenders, because I was absolutely perplexed, and I'm still perplexed to this day that he got rid of Sviatchenko and he kept Boyata. Bizarre.
I like Boyata. Funny thing about Lagerbielke, I think he might end up at Aberdeen on loan because their manager was his former manager at Elfsborg, so it could be
Lagerbielke.
Yeah, Lagerbielke. Yeah, I don't think they could afford Naraki on loan, to be fair. But I mean, James, Strange of the Doctor says Yang, Odin, and Kwan from this batch look good for their age. I give them pre-season and see how it goes. And I remember when Naraki got signed, everyone was putting their hopes on the fact that this is a Rodgers signing because he played against Lega Warsaw in the UEFA Conference League with Leicester a couple of years back. Is he froze?
Aye, I'm back now, I think.
Oh, right, okay, you're back now. But yeah, everyone was putting their hopes. Right, I'll go back to it. Right, so Strange of the Doctor said Yang, Odin, home, and Kwan from this batch because they look good for their age. Give them pre-season and see how it goes. And then within that, I remember the whole kind of hurrah about Narowski signing was this is a Rodgers signing because he played against Lega Warsaw 2 years ago in the Conference League. He was playing centre back, blah blah blah. It hasn't mounted to anything, much like Lagerbielke. Is it just this batch of players? Is just there's no hope for any of them. Even Palma. If I'm not being a wind-up merchant, I would sell Palma tomorrow. I think he's bogging, but that's just my opinion.
No, mate, I totally accept that. And look, Palma does split opinion, but I like Palma for the scent. And look, I like Haksabanovic as well, so history is going to be great to me with that one. But I just like Palma because I don't think he ever hides. He's always the one that kind of shows for it. And when we went through that kind of...
It's too slow to hide, James. Fuck's sake.
But when we went through that spell, kind of run about Christmas time, look, the football isn't great, but Palma bailed us out a few times. I'm not saying he's going to be replacing Jota or anything like that. Probably even for myself next season, Palma would be a squad player. But see the Yang thing, I honestly do not get what you see at all with Yang. Like, even as Yang could be 6 years old and putting in the performances, and I still wouldn't see it. I just do not understand the Yang thing. It looked good against Aberdeen. I'm sure it was in November at Parkhead when we spanked Aberdeen 5 or 6, and then he looked good against Dundee the week before, the midweek before he gets sent off at Tynecastle, and then he wasn't seen again. I do not get it. Yang, I will nail my colours to the mast now and say that Yang won't make it as a Celtic player. If he's still here next season, he'll probably be even less involved than it has been this season. I do not get it. Kwan, look, the Athletic Bilbao game's going to take a bit of getting over with Kwan because that looked as if he'd won a competition to play in that game. But he looks, to be fair, he's looked all right for St Mirren by all accounts, so maybe he's one that deserves a chance pre-season. Odin Thiago home, it's kind of hard to make a judgment call on him. There was a couple of games that he played where he was just kind of there. He didn't look particularly good or particularly bad. So I wouldn't be against loaning him out. So I'd loan him out. Kwan, I'd probably give a chance in pre-season, but ultimately probably loan him out or offload him in the summer. And Yang, I would have fucked out the door in January, to be honest with you.
For me anyway, Yang has more, what's that word, ceiling potential than Palma. Palma really bores me. It reminds me of when John Joe Kenny used to play for Celtic, that feeling when he gets the ball. Makes me instantly tired. And I'm not being disrespectful to him. It's just 9 times out of 10, he loses the ball. And it's just me. Look, again, I'm way off in opinions. Look at Burnaby. Look at multiple players who I've said is going to make it in the Celtic shirt. Fuck's sake, I said Burnaby first choice by Christmas under Rodgers, and look how that turned out. You know what I mean? He's over in Brazil. He can't even get a game for Internationale, whoever he's with at the moment. But Ross, we'll go through the European campaign before we go on to the league stuff and domestic cups. just to kind of round the European chat off. And if I have a wee look here, this was our Champions League group. So it was Feyenoord, Atletico Madrid, and Lazio were the things we were going to face. And what was your feeling getting into the group stage last year now, the last season? I mean, we've seen exciting football under Postecoglou. We've seen a lot of progressive football. We played at Real Madrid for nearly 45 minutes of parquet, and that was our moral victory, so to speak, against the Spanish team. But or the Spanish giants, as I say. But before we go into the matches itself, but were you excited about this campaign? Did you see Celtic making a dent in Europe?
I'm always excited going into a Champions League campaign. I think everybody is. It's where you want to be. You want to be playing against the best teams. And once Celtic go out, by the way, I actually am not really arsed with the Champions League anymore. I think it's lost its appeal as such. But I know we're
having so?
Well, I don't know if it's maybe an age thing. I'm getting a bit older and I don't maybe watch as much football as I used to live. And obviously we're doing this podcast now. It's always been all Celtic, but it was all football. But it's probably more Celtic than it's ever been for me. But listen, there's always an excitement. We've got the change of format in the Champions League. It's a change of format as such, but it's still not. It's still geared up to suit the bigger teams, if you like. But in terms of that draw, you look at it: Lazio, Feyenoord, and
Atletico.
Shit, Atletico. I had a total mind blank there. Not for the first time this evening, but no,
structure.
You look at that, and on paper, you're looking. You're going, right. We've got a chance at home against Lazio. We've got a chance against Lazio. We've got a chance against Feyenoord. Home and away. Atletico will be very difficult, but again, at home, you think you've got a chance. And it's similar in the sense, I look at Scotland's group in the Euros, and people are, what's this on the shrooms? I wish. But you look at Scotland's group in the Euros, right, and the general consensus for me is that people think Germany's got to be the tough game, and then Switzerland and Hungary, they're not that good. They're good teams, and Scotland it'll be fine margins. It'll be really, really tough. Scotland could walk out of that group and not win a game quite easily, because that's how good their teams are for me. And Scotland's a good team, and it's the same. Celtic have went into that group, and you look at it on paper and go, we could win there, we could win there, or we could do that, or we could get a draw here, there, whatever. Do you know what I mean? But it turns out in the end that we leave that group with, I think it was 4 points. But on paper, you look at it at the time, without hindsight, without having the games being played, you were optimistic and you felt there was a real chance, obviously off the back of having bet Lazio, albeit it's a completely different team for both sides. Off the back of that, the results against Lazio, you're filled with optimism that we can go and do that again. And then Feyenoord, who are a good side, but I mean, we actually should have beat them probably home and away. But it was just the way things transpire. Things need to go for you at that level, and they didn't quite go for Celtic at times in that group. But beforehand, I was very optimistic, but also wary, having watched us in the last campaign not be clinical enough. We created enough chances. This time around, I think we probably didn't create as much chances, but we were slightly more clinical in front of goal. Kyogo had that sort of first season in the Champions League under his belt, so he was more confident in front of goal. And I know I've went off on a tangent there, and the question was, how did I feel beforehand? So I'll stop at that.
It's a Friday, Ross. It's a Friday. Express it. There's no structure to this podcast. You should know that by now.
I just got that.
I was like, whew, and then they come back again, doesn't it?
Whoa. I had the wind there, and I got
But like, no, I actually do agree. And Sam from come up with a good point there, James. Last year when we were discussing this, obviously the Jungle Gyms podcast and then the Celts podcast didn't merge at that time, but I think we're all having the same discussion. Will we finish third? Will we finish second? Because we were confident into the group. And it feels like we'll have the same discussion this season coming, obviously with a new format. Where will we finish? Will we progress? Will we get into the knockout stage? But it feels like every season is the same old conversation. And not in a bad way, by the way, because it's fun to be optimistic. It's fun to expect your team to compete in Europe. But again, it's like the realism kicks in, and like what Ross said, you're playing against these world class teams, and it's obviously like 400 steps up from the SPFL, so it's massive. But I do expect us to do better, and as I said, I'll come to a few individual games shortly. But how did you feel going into that campaign yourself?
If being totally honest, at the time, it would have been harder to handpick and I was going to say easier, but a more favourable draw. I was well up for it. I was always in the third place camp, the same as I was last year. I still maintain it was achievable in both years, but funnily enough, you're talking about Scotland. I think that's very kind of relatable. For me, Celtic in Europe are the way Scotland are, or certainly used to be, in terms of that kind of glorious failure. So close yet so far. And it's like the Real Madrid game under Ange is the one that it bothers me so much, because it's like the way, not even necessarily just Celtic supporters, but like FITBA, people that like FITBA in general, the way they talk about that game. And it's like, oh, Celtic were so good. And look, nobody's expecting us to go out and beat Real Madrid, but it's almost as if it's like a participation trophy that we were in the game for as long as we were in it. And I just find it so condescending. And look, as I say, like, I've never expected us to go out and take anything off Madrid, of course, no. And we did play well, but it's just the kind of that fondness in the way that game's looked back upon. And ultimately, we get comfortably beaten in the end, regardless of how good or how poorly we played. You get the exact same amount of points for it. So when the draw was made, I was well up for getting third place and getting into Europa and hopefully getting a wee run in there. But ultimately it wasn't to be. And again, you think back, that Atletico Madrid game at home played really well. Obviously we got a draw there. Lazio at home, that was another kind of glorious failure when you think back to how the end of that game played out. Was it Feyenoord away? We kind of shot ourselves in the foot with the sending off, and like Ross says, we were well in the game at that point. We could have, in my opinion, at least took 4, if no 6 points off them. So it's just things like that, and it's missed opportunities, and it's been a bit of a pattern with Celtic in Europe over the last number of years, really. Even thinking back to some of the Europa League campaigns where we've got into, like, I always think back to the one for me is the Copenhagen game, where I'm sure it's Edouard scores the penalty, and we've somehow still in the tie after playing really, really poorly, and then we just let Copenhagen get up the park and score right for kick-off, and we end up losing and obviously getting out. But as you say, you go into it with full optimism, but ultimately at the end, I think the overriding feeling of the European campaign was disappointment, because we could and we probably should have done a lot better than we did.
Yeah, and by the way, Ross, speaking of doing better, I could have picked individual matches with a defeat 6-0 to Atletico and the Lazio games, but I wanted to remain positive within the European campaign and talk about the few results that we did get. And I want to start with yourself, with the Atletico 2-each game. Kyogo scored that fantastic goal. Palma with a thunderbolt from the right-hand side. And obviously they've replied with Griezmann and Morata, and then they got a sending off for Diego De Paul. I mean, the calibre of player for them is incredible. I think Griezmann's available for €10 million this summer, apparently, according to his release clause, which is mad to think. Celtic put a bit in, who knows? But it's like that game in particular. I mean, for the Kyogo goal, it was brilliant play. I think already was involved, and Kyogo into the box and toe poked the pass Oblak into the bottom left corner, and Palma from the right hand side, I think, was off a corner kick. He took it, bang, again into the same side. It does show in a roundabout way, like what James said, when we get the game management side of it right, and there's a few people in the comments saying about getting the defending better, the concentration levels better, you can maybe pick up more results like we did against Atletico.
Aye, you can. I think in terms of that game itself, I felt like we got the attacking side of the game spot on. That first goal that you talked about, the Kyogo goal, the link up, or the 1-2 with Matt O'Reilly was absolutely spectacular. It was probably one of the best goals we scored all season, and possibly one of the best goals that I've seen a Celtic team score in Europe in terms of how they worked it and how they absolutely split wide apart. Quite, for the most part, probably really good European defence. Thought it was an absolutely phenomenal goal, and it wouldn't have been out of place with any of the top teams in Europe had they scored that night. I think I said that at the time, but I thought the performance on the whole was absolutely tremendous. I just can't believe I just said on the whole. That sounds so wrong.
Again, you're talking about what you were speaking about before the podcast, Ross. Okay. Stop it. Stop it.
But the performance overall was absolutely tremendous in that game.
On your home.
They defended pretty well for the most part, what I can remember. But I can't even remember who the central defensive partnership was that night. Any years?
Gary Caldwell McManus. Who? What, for Atletico?
No,
it was your man.
Celtic.
Celtic. It was Lagerfeld and Scales. Lagerfeld and Scales.
I mean, well, you look at that, right? We've conceded 2 goals against a really good side, and it's not by any stretch our first choice central defensive partnership. It's transpired now that is Liam Scales and Carter Vickers. For me, Liam Scales, he's done a fantastic job for Celtic this season, and we wouldn't have won the league without him. But if you want to make an impact in Europe, then it needs to be somebody better than him. But that's by the by. That's another point for another night. We've done well in that game on the night, and if we could have replicated that 6 times, we would have had a really good chance of getting out of the group. But it's a big ask for. At the time when we were playing that, we were playing Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday, or Saturday, Tuesday, Sunday, Wednesday, and we were depleted with a lot of injuries, and it was a big ask for especially with the poor recruitment in the summer. It was a really big ask. But as we've said beforehand, going into it, you don't know what these players are going to be like. They could be the next Hatate, they could be the next Matt O'Reilly. They weren't. For all the world, they weren't. They might be, some of them might be, given a wee bit more time, but when you come into Celtic, for the most part, you need to hit the ground running, especially when you've got a Champions League campaign really imminent for when you signed, and it didn't work out for a lot of the guys, and that's why we ended up probably, not the only reason, but it was a big reason as to why we ended up with only the 4 points in another Champions League campaign where we performed well at times. And I actually don't think we probably didn't perform in an attacking sense. We probably didn't perform as well as what we had done the previous season. But I would probably say that in certain games we looked a bit more controlled. But we probably, you could argue that we probably should have won more games in Angie's campaign than what we did in Rodgers' campaign. But as I've said before, we were a bit more clinical, and that's why it wasn't because we were a better team or we played better football or anything like that. It was because we were slightly more clinical in front of goal in the Rodgers campaign. That's why we picked up 4 points to, I think it was 2 points in Angie's campaign.
Well, that's another thing, James, that Ross is alluding to there. But we talked about progress and get more points than we did the season before. We achieved that. We got a victory, and that was people are saying was dead rubber. I don't think any game of the Champions League for us anyway could be considered that. Again, Lewis Palma, your man with a penalty kick. Largabielka wins the game in the 10 minutes. He came into the team, then he was took back out of it again and never to be seen again. He done a job for us anyway. But to get that Champions League win, and I think strains of the doctor, and Ross mentioned it too, about Rodgers' football might be more suited to the European kind of competition, more possession-based and more methodical, getting through the final thirds and things. But we did get more points in the season before. I think that's fair to say because it's fact. Did it feel like progress? Probably not, because I think we all expected to do a bit better with the caliber of teams in the group. But all in all, like you said, for me anyway, I think the European campaign probably does serve up a big dose of disappointment in reality of things anyway.
I think that's it, mate. The Feyenoord game, look, we went into that knowing we had nothing to play for. Neither did Feyenoord, to be fair. They had third place sealed as well. So it was, to all intents and purposes, a friendly with stars in the ball. Obviously, getting the win, it gets you a couple of million or whatever it is for getting the win in the bank. And to be fair, that night we certainly didn't celebrate it as if it was a friendly. Obviously, just the nature of the win with the last kick of the ball, it was well celebrated. And look, it gets the monkey off the back as well, because we kept hearing about how long it had been since we had won in the Champions League. So obviously to get that kind of put away and done and dusted, hopefully gives us a fresh slate going into next year. But in terms of progress, I wouldn't really subscribe to that. As I say, you're out with a game to go. The team that we're playing didn't have anything to play for in that last game either. They couldn't finish second. They were nailed on for third. And progress in the Champions League, to me, it has to be literal progress, either be it into the Europa or through to the last 16. So, as I say, the European campaign for me, it was disappointing how it played out.
What was that team called that beat Rangers? Progress Niederkorn or something like that? I remember that. Pedro Cassini was in the heads of his welly boots on. Strange of the doctor, 2 or 3 million for a dead rubber victory, not too shabby. San Fran saying to me, 4 games against teams around our level. I mean, in the group, apart from Atletico, I think we could have competed better with Lazio. Like James said, we were competitive in the games, but how they played out in the end, it was game management more than anything that probably let us down in that aspect of things. San Fran, again, how much for a moral victory? Well, you get a lap of honour, a few cheers and claps around the pitch, but that's all you're going to get. Be as confident that Clement will be long gone by December. But look, we'll move on to that. We'll park the European campaign to one side. We'll go through the kind of positive points there. And we're straight into a negative for us. And it was the first time of asking Celtic got put out of the League Cup. Marty Watkins give Kilmarnock a 1-0 victory at Rugby Park. Kyle McGregor's already come out and said this season that we want to chase that trophy and bring it back to paradise next season. But the first time of asking in the League Cup, I think it's fair to say we were all gutted. Let's be honest.
We were, because we've all become accustomed to trebles, and I know that the season or Angie's first season we won a double, and the season before that we won absolutely nothing. But for the most part, in the last sort of 7 years, something like that, we've won 5 trebles in 7 years. Yeah. Might be 5 and 8 now. If I've got my maths right, I can't remember, but it's something like that. So it's a lot. It's the for the most part that's we've done trebles, so we've become accustomed to it. And to go out at the first hurdle, it was difficult to take. It was early in the season. I can't remember if that was how early that was. Was it before the first league game? I don't.
It was in August.
Was it August? But it wasn't before. The league campaign had started, eh?
Yeah, but I'm going to come on to the league campaign. Yeah.
Aye, no, but what I mean is that we'd obviously got a couple of wins under our belt in the league, and then you go to Kilmarnock and you lose. Was it 1-0?
1-0, yeah.
It was tough. Brendan Rodgers comes in. You want him to come in and pick up from where he left off and go and win that first trophy. And to fall at the first hurdle, it was a difficult one to take, but it happened. And you sort of go to yourself, right, okay, right, we can't win that trophy, but there's a long season ahead. We've got a really good squad here. Again, albeit that I didn't know how poorly the summer signings were going to do. But at the time, you were thinking we've got a good squad, but we've got a good nucleus. And by the way, it has transpired that we have got a good nucleus here squad in terms of the guys who can probably be our starting 11. It's everything out with that. And listen, we might get onto that, but you were still hopeful that we could go on, or I certainly was hopeful that we could still go on and win the other 2 trophies available. And obviously, we went through an absolute roller coaster to get there, but we done that. But to not win that first trophy, and we've spoke about it for many years now, that certainly since the League Cup has been started, the finals been started getting played in December, I think it's even more prominent in the fact that it gives you that sort of boost, especially if there's a league race that's close. You get that boost for winning the first trophy. We are good enough. We're good enough to go on and win other trophies. And Celtic did that under Ange when the odds were fully against them. And then Rangers, when the odds were fully against them under Clement, or Clement, as the guy said in Super Scoreboard, because we're Scottish.
Who said that? Who said Clement?
He came on to Super Scoreboard and he was like the guys on the panel. He was like, "Look, why are you saying Clement? These are no Belgian. These are for Scotland. It's Clement." And the guy was like, "So do you go into the shop mask for a crossing or something?" It's like brilliant. But aye, under Clement, under Clement, they came in. They won the first trophy, and unlike Celtic, where they were the underdogs, we won the first trophy. We went on and won the league. They couldn't do it. They bottled it again, but Celtic still had to win their games, and that's a thing that always sticks in me. They keep saying, "Oh, we bottled it. He's been there, won the league. If we had done this at Ross County, we'd done." You still had to come to Parkhead, regardless. With the beaties, with Betties, and Celtic had to still win their games because it's a 38-game season, and it's whoever wins the most games. Doesn't matter when you lose the games. It's whoever wins the most games. We done it. Get it round them.
And that's the end of the season review. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Okay,
but you went different roads there. I went from League Cup to Cement, the Clementine, I don't know, and I finished with us winning the league. Spoiler alert: Celtic did win the league.
It was tough to take not winning that League Cup, but.
You wouldn't know it.
We sorted it out.
No. But I think it's fair to say, James, as well, and look, this might be a bit, I don't know, controversial to say, but I think a lot of the people who would get called bedwetters got a lot of grief around about this time, or get called entitled, because there was a lot of, obviously, uproar on social media, and I think Rodgers talking about that negative media outlay started in around August time, and I think it all kind of harboured around this game at Kilmarnock, getting put out of the League Cup first time asking, mentality was questioned, style of play was questioned, recruitment that early on, even though Ross believed they were all Maradona and Messi's and Ronaldo's, but that was all getting questioned at that time of things. But how did you feel getting popped out of the League Cup? And yes, I've seen Brown Warrior in there saying it's the Diddy Cup, but at the end of the day, a trophy's a trophy in my eyes. It's silverware. It adds to the collection. It adds to a treble. And the prestige of a treble isn't to be underestimated. We all love doing it. Even if you finish with a League Cup and a league trophy instead of the Scottish Cup, it's still a fantastic season. So you can't, for me, it's a trophy that's there to be won. And we got put out the first time of asking. And that wasn't good enough in my eyes at that time of the season.
Not definitely. And at that time, that was still, or at least for myself, that was kind of pretty early on in the bedwetting stages. At that time, you just thinking, look, Kilmarnock obviously would go on to have a fantastic season, but they had just been promoted up for the Championship, so you're thinking, right, hopefully we can go on and obviously get into the next round, and then, I don't know, obviously, spoiler alert, but we ended up winning the league at Rugby Park. But
seriously,
prior to that, it was like Kilmarnock was our kind of bogey team, the way Livingston used to be. If that's down to the park or just McInnes had them up for it, whatever it was, we just couldn't get past them at Rugby Park. But no, that was obviously at that point that was really disappointing. But as I say, I'm not going to rewrite history. At the time, as I say, for me at least, looking back, it would only going to get worse for there. I'm not going to change it. It's all in here. Obviously, what I said about Rodgers at the time, and I stand by it because I think the Fitba, probably overall for the season, to be honest, the Fitba hasn't been good enough. I don't think you can really argue otherwise. We did come into it, obviously, at the end of the season, to be fair, but kind of speaking about up until the Kilmarnock game that we're talking about, and even a wee bit on after that, it just wasn't good enough. And watching that Sky thing the night, it was on earlier. I think it was almost as if Rodgers took the way it was portrayed in the press. It was as if he took it personally. Look, rightly so as well, I suppose. Like, he has got a track record that's fine. We can sit and, obviously, I'm saying it with the benefit of hindsight, having won the double, but
you're losing Ross. You're losing him.
Not at all. Not at all.
At the time, the Fitba, it wasn't great to watch. It was backwards and sideways, as we said at the time as well. So I'm not going to rewrite history and say it was brilliant and we were unlucky, because we won on that day as well. We probably deserved to get bet based on the performance.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I do totally agree with you in an aspect of things. And Ross, if you Google a picture, if you Google the word structure, it brings up a picture of you punting. I don't know. By the way, I'm the postman.
I'm a fucking unit, like.
I'm the postman. You're the structure guy. You're the head of development. And there's Ram 118 there, like, down below us. So he's joined us tonight. We're absolutely buzzing to have him along. And by the way, that's no disrespect to Ram 118. He does a fantastic job. He's in an attic. He's in an attic like James.
It's not,
get it fucking up, you.
Need disrespect, need disrespect to Ryan, but fuck James.
But in terms of that, Ross, you mentioned that the league campaign in regards to us playing a few games. We actually remained unbeaten in the month of August, and obviously the first Glasgow Derby game rolled around. Do you remember the narrative in around that game? Injuries, the negative media was spinning. And what was what memories? We're talking like this was in 2002, but what was your overall thoughts towards that? Because some of the headlines were we were going to get basically pumped, and before we come on to the result, but do you remember all them headlines and just the utter dross that the media were putting out there on the pages?
I remember them. It wasn't dross. I thought we were going to get pumped. I really did. We were in.
Did you think that as well, right? Not.
Aye.
Did you think that?
I think we dropped points at home to St Johnstone, if I remember right.
There was a draw. There was a draw.
I think it was one each at home to St Johnstone, and with a lot of obviously injuries, it was a makeshift defence. We were going into that game. I don't think the summer window was actually shut yet, and we brought in Nat Phillips right at the end of the window, and for all the world, everybody thought he's been brought in for this game, and then he's injured and he doesn't play. He can't play, and you're like, before the game, you're like, fucking hell, we brought this guy in, he's injured. Why have we brought him in then? And we have to go with the guys that we aren't sure about in Liam Scales and Lagerbielke. And I thought they'd done a stellar job. Liam Scales was brilliant. He had a wee couple of shaky moments at the start of the game. Lagerbielke had that moment where he gets away with one, but I think for the most part, the both of them done all right. And I think I said it in a previous podcast recently that Gavin hosted, that we played a very different game for what Brendan Rodgers would like his team to play. But we went there, we had no fans, and he stifled Rangers in terms of not being defensive, but being really slow and laborious, being not time wasting or that. No, I don't mean that, but they were very measured. They were keeping the ball as well as they could and stifling Rangers in that sense, but still trying to impose themselves on the game. But when they could, slow it right down, frustrate the fans, don't let them get a head of steam in terms of the team, and then the fans feeding off them. And they done that really well. And then they get the goal. I think it was it just before half time. Aye, there you go.
Yeah. Just before half-time, Kyogo rifles it past Butland.
It says 1 hour and 20 minutes in the corner. Oh no, that's their time.
Oh my days!
I'm joking. But so I think the goal was maybe just before half-time, if I remember right. But regardless of that, we get the goal and we get the first goal, and that gives us something to hold on to. But again, we don't just play defensively. We have to defend, and we defend really well. And people will say we got away with one with that. I think it was Roof scores the goal, but Dessers obviously intercepts the ball. But listen, it was a foul. However you want to dress it up, it was a free kick. Lagerbielke is doing a kicking motion. If Dessers gets in front of him and nicks the ball, play on. It's totally fine. But Dessers gets in front of him, puts him across, puts his body, not even his body. If he puts his body across him, you can argue it's not a foul. But he puts his leg across him and stops him doing the kicking motion. So it's all day, every day a free kick. And listen, if VAR's no there, we probably don't get the decision. But that's why VAR is there, and we get the decision. It was the right decision, and then we seen the game out. And it, as I said in a previous podcast, that sets the tone, not for the season, but in terms of the derby games. We go in there, we win at Ibrox, we no fans, we are a totally disjointed team, and it gives us the belief. And probably my favourite moment of the whole season was watching Tony Ralston walking off the park and going, yes, fucking yes. Brilliant, absolutely superb. That's what it meant, though. He knew how big a win that was. Off the back of dropping points, playing with a totally disjointed team with no fans, and we go to Ibrox and we win 1-0 against all the odds, against even what a lot of our fans, in fact, every single fan of Celtic apart from Wally Dobbin, we all thought we were going there and we were probably going to lose the game, at best get a draw. But we went there and we won it, and it gave us the belief, and it set the tone for the other Glasgow derbies for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and we talk about psychological edge a lot in these games, James, and you hear pundits speak about it, ex-players speak about it, Lenny and ex-managers, and they always say the first one, while it might not mean a lot overall in the whole title landscape, it means a lot in terms of, and I think Anton Rogan's left foot said it gets in their head, and like what Ross said, we played with a depleted lineup, barely, a lot of first-choice players missing, like Lagerbielke and Scales. Scales was a senior pro, and their two centre halves, and managed to see through a game like that. Ross is right to bring up the incident with Dessers, and rightly so. VAR called that back, and it was a free kick. And in terms of that as well, strange enough, the doctor said there's nothing really positive about the opening of the season apart from beating them in the first game at Ibrox. Are you off that train of thought? And how vital do you think that game actually was, leading up to obviously the pivotal moments of the season when we come on to them?
Well, it's definitely massive, as you say, in terms of getting that belief in things, if it did ever come to a run-in. But to be fair, at that time, I know we're saying we weren't great. We've got to remember we still had a gap. They still had fucking...
Well,
Boy Trotteridge, who...
You there, James? I think our James is through. Are you back?
I'm back. Aye, where did you get up to?
I didn't hear anything. You're going to have to rewind and start.
No, I was just saying it's obviously the game at Ibrox. It's massive for belief in terms of obviously if it did ever come to a running. But at that point, we're going to have obviously a gap as well. Where it looked as if the league could potentially be called early if it kept going the way it was. As I say, they still had Del Boy Trotter in charge at that point, so they had their revolution under Clement. But no, obviously getting into that day as well. As you say, like, saying about Nat Phillips, as well, and Liam Scales and Lagerbielke at the back. To be fair, Liam Scales, that was probably his best performance all season. It was absolutely fantastic that day. And it was just basically standing up and being counted. But that day was obviously a great day, cracking goal as well, past England's number 34. But no, it was massive. Obviously in the context of the season and in that period as well, where we maybe weren't playing so well, but we managed to obviously find a gap, whereby we could take some comfort in the league.
Do you think though, like, seeing you look back at that first game and what we're saying, I think we had a Bada starting that game. I believe it was a Bada on the right, and it was made on the left, and a makeshift centre half pairing. And a lot of these games we're going to come on to, Celtic didn't have either their first choice 11, or we played relatively not poor, but average, and we're still managing victories against them. That must sting them a lot because they're giving their all, but we're still getting the points, we're still getting the victory. So psychological damage, and Michael Beale's time came to an end shortly after that. They got beat by Aberdeen, then he got the sack. But that game must have been vital in that for the players. Again, their crumbling mentality to come into action there before, like you said, they had that revolution under Clement and didn't even win their own league from December to fucking April or whatever it was. So it does prove vital, really, doesn't it, that first game, psychologically anyway?
Aye, definitely. And as I say, obviously at that point we had a gap as well, which we could take some comfort in. But look, the games are massive, and especially like you're saying, get into it, we kind of half a team out injured and a bit of a makeshift backline, and obviously getting the win, it wasn't even a draw. And look, it feels as if it's happened after every game we've played them this season. I mean, look no further than the cup final last week. We're beating them, and then we're coming out after it, and we're shite, and we're there for the taking. And we've been there for the taking all season, and you haven't managed it. So it was just another one of the days. And maybe in some of the games we haven't played our best, or we've played really well for 45 minutes and let them in, has been the case as well. But we've still got the job done, and in the games, that's all that really matters.
Yeah, and strange love. Brendan could set up training cones with one striker and still beat the fucking zombies. I think that's and Rand said it earlier in the comments as well, that Rodgers knows how to win these games. And I mean, you look at it, that myth that Clementine tried to spill out to the media, that some Celtic supporting people thought Rangers were the better team in the cup final and had better stats, was quickly disproven when the actual stats came out about the game. We had more of everything. So on the eye, maybe it looked like they had the better of the play, but stats, numbers, we were the better team, and we won the Scottish Cup. So shove it right up, you dickhead. But before we get on to that, right? Before we get on to that, Ross, this is a really contentious thing. It was around about this time, shortly after this game anyway, maybe a month or two, Celtic decided to take the action, and it was to do with a European game. Obviously, the whole Palestine thing. We don't need to go into the politics side of it, but the Celtic board, in their wisdom, decided to ban the Green Brigade. Now, before we come on to the results in around December time and before that, a lot of supporters, and there's some in the comment section, I'm not speaking for you, Ross, but I think maybe you as well, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, were behind the decision to ban the Green Brigade, or along the lines of kind of put them in, not their place, but not think they're entitled to do this and do that, or go into stadiums beforehand and pick where they're sitting, all that type of stuff. But where did you stand on at the time? Correct me if I'm wrong, by the way, I don't want to speak on your behalf.
I'm trying to even remember why they were banned.
It was because of the Palestine flags. And
so it was, aye.
Yeah.
I couldn't mind if it was like pyrotechnics or something. But aye, at the time, I probably was behind. No, I think I was behind it, if I remember right. Ross looks like he could sleep on a hen's knee, and Stephen can't wait for the 140 question quiz. By the way, I don't know if it's the camera angle, but every single time I'm on, folk think I'm ready to sleep.
That's because you yawn every 2 fucking seconds.
I'm a hard-working man. I do a physical job. But anyway,
you were away to get your jammies in the house coat there, man.
Oh, I was away to there was absolute bedlam in my house for the last 10 minutes about outfits for communions, man. I could just hear it all going on, and folk walking on their heels and all that. But went through to see what was going on. But
Ross's elbowing fucking. Yo, shut up!
It was absolute bedlam. But I I think I was on board with banning them, and it was, listen, I can't remember exactly. I'll not make the same cases I did at the time because it was raw and it was there at the time and you were in it. But just thinking back, I just remember, like, listen, I used to have a season ticket, Parkhead, sat in the Lisbon Lions stand just round for the Green Brigade. And I've always had a bee in my bonnet with the Green Brigade. Listen, I acknowledge all the good they do in terms of the atmosphere they bring and stuff like that. And the tifos are phenomenal and the
biblical,
food
some may
drives
say.
and stuff. But in the food drives that they do are tremendous as well. But with that comes a lot of bad. And it's like anything else in life. You've got pros and cons. And listen, they've came back into the stadium now, and I think we can. I think I can admit, and we can all admit that they do make a difference. They do help the team. They do spur the team on. That cannot be ignored. But they need, and they have done. For they've got back in, I think they have done for the most part adhered to what other fans adhere to, and what other fans are quite happy to adhere to. And they are no better than any other fan. I've always maintained that, albeit that sometimes they think they do. But again, since they've been allowed back in, I've not seen as much evidence of that as what I did previously. I think there's been a slight sea change, if you like, in how they behave and how they act. And uh, I would have to say that since they have been allowed back in, whatever discussions have been had, I'm warming to the Green Brigade a hell of a lot more than what I did in the 10 years or so previous. Because when I had my season ticket and I was near them, I really didn't like them. I didn't like some of the things they done. It wasn't always about the football. They done protest walkouts and stuff like that, and that wasn't for me. Because when I was there and I'm in that, Celtic are playing, we're all there to support Celtic, but everybody's looking at the Green Brigade doing their walkout, and it was like a sideshow, and we didn't need it. But I have to say, since they've come back in, whatever conversations have been had, the Green Brigade they've went up in my estimations slightly. Listen, I'm never going to want to be a member of it or anything like that. But for me, they've certainly behaved in a better manner for the most part since they've been allowed back in the stadium and helped the team as much as the team has been really good in the last 10 to 12 games. They've helped the team get to where we all wanted them to be, and everybody talks about it. When the team and the support are in unison and the staff, we're a really hard team to stop domestically, and it's transpired again this season.
Yeah, and again, I'm of that train of thought with yourself. I'm probably always been a pro supporter of the Green Brigade, and whether or not people agree or disagree with the kind of stuff they get involved with, James, political side of things, and look, as I always say and maintain, that Ross is writing songs for the GB would be good crack. From San Fran there, I always say and maintain, like, you kind of have sympathy for other causes throughout the world, and in terms of Palestine, and I'm from Ireland myself. We've been through the ringer with different things, and that's well publicised, and no need to go into politics, but that's why I'm always kind of on board with what they're protesting against, or what they're giving people a voice. And you always hear people say, how's that going to make a nation be recognised, or their people be recognised? But it's people not forgetting that other people exist in conflict and in times of need and times of despair in other countries. And I think as well, we can get lost in that sometimes, in terms of, yeah, maybe they shouldn't do certain things, like Ross said, and I do agree with that, like pyrotechnics and things, and kind of scale back on that. Maybe, I don't know, but I've always been on the side. I think the Green Brigade add an awful lot to the stadium. I think that their charity drives, like Ross said, their food things for the people of Glasgow, the fundraising for people within the support, the fundraising for people with illnesses. I think this does a fantastic thing, and you see players always gravitate towards the Green Brigade. You see players like Joe Hart, who his last game was over at the Green Brigade using a microphone and things of that nature. So they're, for me, a fantastic addition to have in the stadium, and the boys group, they're up and coming as well in terms of what they provide atmosphere wise. I know they're bouncing off each other at the moment, but in terms of that, James, where do you kind of lay that whole Green Brigade saga, let's say, to the Celtics kind of downturn in form? Now, before we come on to individual games, would you say that contributed a lot in terms of the form that Celtic had around about that time?
To be honest, I actually can't remember. It was just before Christmas, wasn't it? It was kind of in that.
Yeah.
It would have then. I know we're not talking about individual games, but that would have been around about the Hearts game. They would have been missing, but I think the issue at the time, the banner that they get banned for, it probably wasn't worded great. If we're being honest, I think that's no really a
What was
controversial.
Was that the black banner? Don't say it. Was that the black banner with the organisation on it?
No, it was was it Victory to the Resistance or something?
That one. Right, okay.
That was like the kind of started, but the reason that the Celtic board at least put out, I'm sure it was Fir Park, was that they tried to break into the stadium, but they tried to open the fire exits to let people without the tickets into the ground, and everybody knew that was a bit of a sideshow, but that was the reason that was given for banning them. And look, what I will say with the Green Brigade, I think there's a lot of people that are dead against the Green Brigade, and then the flip side of that is there's people that think the sun shines out their arse regardless. And I think I'm fairly down the middle, to be honest. I just kind of take it as it comes with them. I think they've done some absolutely fantastic stuff. I think they've done some absolutely stupid stuff, which has just shot themselves in the foot. But in terms of obviously the atmosphere in the stadium, and at that point, ultimately it did have an effect, and I think that was borne out in the results as we'll come on to discuss, as I say, just kind of prior to Christmas. But for me, it would have had an impact.
Yeah. Someone comes in here. Was it Ernest? Mostly that the Green Brigade's politics are supporting oppressed people and a healthy mistrust of power. Anton Rogan, back in the day, full stadium sang, not most who would have started them, sit in the Green Brigade section. Now, thinking back, it was horrible at times this season, but hey ho, we're champions, 100%. And I mean, coming to that, obviously the whole Green Brigade thing was resolved, and by the way, you're right to say they have behaved in a different manner, which is good to see. Maybe the dialogue went well with the club and the supporters group, which is a welcome thing. But in the round December time, now leading into December, Celtic had 2 draws, but in December really went to the crunch. Ross, in the first game, I think it was their first defeat of the season, was Kilmarnock again at Rugby Park. We lost 2-1. I don't know what Joe Hart's doing there. I mean, he's not even in his net. But do you remember anything about that game? Do you remember how you were feeling? Because firstly, the defeat of the season, it's always catastrophic when we drop points, but losing all 3, I think, is like, fuck me. It's like one of them things that are going, is this going to be our season? I think that's what people like Jed, myself, maybe James, were going, something needs to give.
Well, I actually didn't watch that game. I remember exactly where I was. I was at the chapel pantomime leading up to Christmas. I was away with the family, and
what's the chapel pantomime?
So the chapel in Falthouse run a bus to go to the pantomime at the pavilion in Glasgow. So
did you think the chapel was replacing Peter Pan or something? Just a pantomime about people in a chapel.
In the name of the flies behind you, father.
James, you're a bit of a dick, eh? You're a bit of a dick.
But no, I was at that at the pavilion, but at half time at the pantomime, I went straight to the bar. Would you know, to get a beer? It's not like me, but when I was in there, I was talking to one of the guys I know who was there, and he was like, he would had to hang me on his phone, and he's like, fucking just got beat 2-1. But I picked him up wrong, and I was like, oh, whatever. And I kind of was like, thought we'd won 2-1. Don't know why. But then I sat back down and I looked at my phone, and I seen it was 2-1 to Kilmarnock. And I was absolutely...
Was it the group chat giving it away?
That was a big drink, James.
I just finishing it off.
But when I realised it was 2-1, I thought, went to Rugby Park, lost again. It's like, this is not good enough. I didn't think at that moment that we wouldn't win the league, but you could see there needed to be changes. Something needed to happen, because we were dropping at that stage. We'd probably dropped. I was going to say probably dropped too many points. We obviously didn't, because we won the league, but I think when you put it up against other league campaigns in recent times, at that stage of the season, we'd probably drop more points than we're used to. But in terms of an overall league campaign, when you look at campaigns before Rangers died, if you like, like the sort of 2008, there was a lot of points dropped. Not a lot of points, but there was points dropped, probably more than, like, say, Angie's season when they won the treble. But even the season before that, Ange Postecoglou's team dropped a lot of points, albeit it had a rebuild to do. Brendan Rodgers didn't have a rebuild to do, but he was sort of undone with the really bad transfer activity. So it was a different reason, but it was giving you the same sort of result, if you like, when you marry it up to Angie's first season. Albeit Ange had that run for when they got to the top of the league, they just didn't let it go. And it was a different sort of league campaign in terms of this time. It was more up and down instead of slightly up and down and then a really good run, a longer run, where this was up, down, and then a really good last stretch. But there was a lot of points dropped, and I think at that stage of the season there was more points dropped than you would have liked, in terms of we'd obviously already drew at home with St Johnstone, we'd lost to Kilmarnock. I think there was probably other points dropped at that point of the season, but that was maybe did you say that was our first defeat?
First defeat of the season was against Kilmarnock.
First defeat in the league,
Well, so, league defeat.
That's what I mean. Aye, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if it was at that point, but I made the point at some point that if somebody had told me at the start of the season, I think it was maybe after the Hearts game, right? I don't know for definite, but I think at one stage we had 3 defeats in the league, right, and maybe 2 draws. And I made the point that if somebody had told me at the start of the season, people are, as I've said, that people are like really used to going a league campaign and maybe like Rodgers' first season not losing a game, Angie's second season, I think they lost once at St Mirren. To replicate that all the time, I think they're the two.
If you remember what you said before that St Mirren game, it'll always stick in my mind.
I do. I said we would go the league campaign unbeaten, and then the next game we could be off St Mirren. But I think if you look at it, say for the turn of the century, right, I would say that Rodgers' first season and Angie's second season, in terms of not dropping that many points, they're a bit of an anomaly. And I know that. You could probably include one of Martin O'Neill's seasons where I think we got like over 100 points, and we ended up losing or dropping points in the last 2 games of the season because they were dead rubbers. But you could say maybe these seasons are anomalies in terms of how many points you drop or how much points you drop. And as I say, I think it was maybe the Hearts game we'd lost. That would have been our 3rd loss maybe, and we'd had 2 draws at a time. And I'd said, like, if we go on to the end of the season now, if somebody had told me that at the start of the season we would lose 3 times and draw twice and win the league, I would still think that was a successful campaign. Not only because we won the league, but realistically, if you go 38 games and you only lose 3 and draw twice, I still think that's a decent effort. Albeit, I don't know, I can't remember how many games we lost in that league campaign, how many we drew. Have you got that to note, Stephen?
For
that league campaign there, how many games we lost and how many we drew?
I have no idea. I don't have a note but I thought you said it.
We drew 6 and we lost 3.
Aye,
Right.
yeah.
So see, really, to be honest, right? I think we ended up with 93 points, even at that, right? So at that point, when I said we'd lost 3 and we drew 2, I think at the time, I said if we went through that campaign and that was all we dropped, I think that's still fairly successful. And even another, what was it, 4 draws on top of what I've just said, not another defeat. That's pretty impressive for me still. 93 points is still a really good return. And we can talk about how up and down it was and how the football wasn't great. But in the end, we still picked up the results and we had a manager, the only manager for me that could have navigated the dross that was brought in to still go and win that league title.
Yeah, and Uncle Nobby Steamboat, 24 seasons of the century, we already have 40 trophies. Our grandkids will see 100 plus. And it is a fantastic record. And I do agree with what you're saying, Ross, to be fair. In terms of that league, 93 points is still in the top 5 within the last 10 or 15 years of league title overall points. So it is a successful season. But I think, James, one of the contributors would be to why people were probably cracking up in around December time was not long after that Kilmarnock defeat. We get beat at home. The Hearts, they're Shankland, put it in. I think Kingsley got a free kick as well and put it past Joe Hart. And I think that for me was one of the most toxic bits of atmosphere I've ever witnessed at a Celtic ground. Now, we were at the vicinity of Celtic Park. We were there for our Christmas night out, going to the Carrydale. We watched the game, and it was one of them games I'll never forget, mainly for 2 reasons. Is the feeling among us. I remember looking around at Anthony Dunn, and he was just sitting at a table, just so dejected and distant, and until he got a few more pints into him. And there's a few others like Ross and Willie trying to be a bit more exuberant and a bit more kind of look on the bright side. And there was myself, I was fucking raging, just wanted to punch walls after watching that shite. And the atmosphere in Celtic Park, and there's chances sacked the board. Brendan Rodgers and the team are being booed. It was just poisonous, maybe not to that extent, but it was really, really out there. It was like very reminiscent of the COVID season with the barriers of the uproar. And that's probably why Ross is outlining a good point there about league defeats is only 3 and 6 draws. But it all kind of accumulated in December, especially the defeats, and the fans were cracking up.
Aye, that was poison that day. I know that the thing, and obviously it went full circle, but the thing that day that everybody took away from it was booing Santa at half time. But see, for me, that it was in the first half, and a Hearts player went down injured, clearly time wasting. Whether they were winning or it was nothing each, I don't know, but they were clearly time wasting. And the ball was in play for a wee bit, and then eventually, a Hearts player put it out. But as the Hearts player put it out, the guy jumped back up to his feet, and that was it. And I always remember it was Greg Taylor was storming with the ball, and obviously you'd normally get it back if a player's been injured. But it was so clearly, it was like a blatant dive. Like, it was obviously just time wasting, and we were stalling about for ages. And everybody, and it was right in front of where I was sitting, and everybody was, don't fucking give it back. And then you could see like everybody pointing, and it was almost like Greg Taylor had accepted whilst he was waiting there and the guy was getting treatment or whatever, that he was going to have to throw this back. And just the level of abuse that he got just in that one moment, I always remember just sitting thinking, like, I've never experienced this before at Celtic Park, and that's our aim player. And what he ended up getting out, obviously throwing the ball back, and he took absolute dog's abuse for it. And then we go on and lose the game. And that game is probably the lowest I've felt throughout the season.
Mm-hmm.
I just mind coming out of that game and thinking this team isn't going to win anything. They're no good enough. The fit isn't good enough. They just individually don't look great. Everything that was good about us under Ange last season has been took away from us. We just totally, it's so slow. It was terrible at that time, and as I say, like, the main takeaway for me that day, even out with the result, was just that wee mini incident with Greg Taylor, and I just remember sitting. I'm like, I've never experienced anything like that at Celtic Park, and basically my full life gone. And then obviously the Santa thing happened, and we go and lose the game. But that was when I was like, right, something's going to need to change here, because look, prior to that, like you're saying, we'd maybe been scraping by, and
Yeah,
maybe no
that's exactly what we were doing. Yeah,
no getting the performances, and I think that was probably about the timing as we kind of joined up together. My war cry back at that point was about performance, and I just needed a performance phase, because it's all one saying that playing poorly and winning is a sign of champions. That's absolutely fine if you're doing it once in a blue moon. I can totally subscribe to that, but you can't rely on it, because when you rely on it, you're going to eventually slip up. And as we kept seeing again and again and again, and not even just with defeats, but with draws. But that Hearts game is the lowest that I had felt all season. And as I say, coming out of that, I didn't see us winning anything at all after back it. And I'm sure they would have had Clement in at that time, and that was when they would own their wee unbeaten run or whatever it was. But basically, they closed the gap, or the gap was closing at least. And I just didn't see how we were going to get any better. And as I say, we were kind of limping into January, and you're thinking, right, hopefully if we get to January, then we can do the business that we need to do, and obviously kick on for there. But that was the lowest I felt this season.
it just makes me laugh every time Ross yawns. I don't know why.
I actually can't believe how many times I've yawned tonight. It's unbelievable.
Are you tired? Are you tired? Like, what's wrong?
I'm quite tired. I'll know.
But no, look, I actually agree with what you're saying there. In terms of that atmosphere and getting to January limping over, and I think Clementine was in position, Ross for Sevco round about that time, maybe coming into December, they were on a run of victories again, like they always do with a new manager. You know how it is. They win the near points total for a couple of weeks, and they think they're champions, blah blah blah. But that whole groundswell kind of came from them 2 defeats, and I was on it. I think Jed as well was saying about, should we change manager getting into the January transfer window to give the new manager time to get recruits in and get who he wants in. We all know, by the way, the Celtic recruitment thing don't work like that. If a new manager did come in, they'd be like, here, we said we'd give you money. Here's a list. Pick. That's the way it would be. But did you ever get into that kind of extreme way of thinking? I know you said previously, earlier on the podcast, that you did kind of think, how are we going to do this? But did you ever think about getting rid of Rodgers in around that Christmas time period? Because it was really toxic, especially that Hearts game.
No, not never once. Not for me. Listen, I understand why people did think about it. James has made the point there. After that Hearts game, it was really, really low. It was probably the lowest I've felt probably all season in terms of a performance. Where they lost, you could probably say that I didn't actually see the Kilmarnock game where we drew 1 each at home, but that was probably my lowest point at where I thought, I've said it previously, where I thought that this is not going to happen for us this season. But I never once did I think that Brendan Rodgers should go. And listen, that's not me saying now, I was right or whatever. I wasn't. That's just how I felt, and I understand why guys felt the way they did. I just, at the time and now, I look at it and I go, right, when in the sort of COVID season, where we were all saying Lennon should go here, and the Celtic board should have acted much quicker than they did. He should have went a lot sooner than he did to try and resurrect what was a failing season, and it just didn't happen. But for me, Brendan Rodgers is well, it's not just for me. Everybody knows that Brendan Rodgers is a better manager than Neil Lennon. I don't think Neil Lennon would be offended anybody saying that. I think he knows that himself. But for me, sacking Brendan Rodgers, it was different. albeit I understand why there was comparisons. There was slight comparisons to that season. It's different points of the season, but it never ever for me got as bad as that. That was absolutely chronic that season. It was the worst in living memory for me. And I know I went through the like I was younger, but I watched Rangers winning 9 in a row, and it was horrible. But just how bad we were in that COVID season was remarkable, and everything that could have went against us did go against us. But I never ever thought, as I've said, there was points where it was really bad, like that Hearts game, but it wasn't a sustained period of absolutely horrendous. It was dotted games, albeit we had 2 back-to-back defeats. But other than that, it was dotted really poor performances where we lost. But there was other performances where we were really poor as well. But we found a way. We got over the line, like the game at Easter Road. I've said numerous times now that game for me was so bad in terms of, I'll say it again, I'm repeating myself, but I can always accept Celtic drawing or losing a game because it can happen, and I'll accept it when we're playing domestically. Always we should, for the most part, have control of a game, but we were all over the place at Easter Road. We had no control, we had no plan. We were winging it, absolutely winging it. Abada came on, he was going through a bad time. That's how bad it was, though. He was coming on, he wasn't in his head, he wasn't there to play that game, but we were so bad that Brendan Rodgers turned to him on the bench, a guy that he knows is not ready. I need you to go and do something in this game for me. And it didn't happen for Abada in that game. He was so bad, and that was probably the final nail in his coffin at Celtic, albeit he wasn't pushed out the door like Hugh Keevins likes to peddle that message. He was not. But that performance for me was unacceptable. The performance against Hearts, we tried, we had a plan at times, but it just didn't go for us. Kilmarnock game, Kilmarnock played better than us at Rugby Park, but at Hibs, even at Aberdeen, when we drew 1 each, we were all over the place. There was no control, and that I'll say it again. I cannot accept that for a Celtic team domestically. We should have, as I've said, you can lose a game, you can draw a game, but you'll have control in that game. But in the games, it was complete disarray, and it was terrible. But again, we got there in the end.
We did. And in case anyone didn't know, we won the league. But no, I think as well, look, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think your ma said there in the comments that he believes or he wants Rodgers still to go. And by the way, it's still refreshing to see other people's opinions. It's still really refreshing to see people sticking to what they believe. And again, it's all about opinions. No one's right or wrong. I know Ross said there, like,
I'd like to know why he wants Rodgers to go. Well, I know he can't put that in a comment. It's difficult to outline that, but for me,
he said about the football.
I get it. He said, go.
He said about the football aspect of things, and what I was going to say to you, Ross, was you don't want to say you're right on here, but on the podcast chat, you put in these things to say, I love being right, and you kind of you do love being right. You do love being right, Ross.
So that people will bite and take the bait, man. That's what I love for.
I don't bite. I've never bitten.
No, not much, no.
But I mean, we're speaking about Rodgers, and again, your man. If you want to come back to what Ross said, outline why you would like him to go, or if he needs another chance. I know he said about the back end as well and transfers. But James, shortly after that, after their defeats, again we were heading into another derby game where the odds were stacked against us. And again, we played it 5 times, drew once, but we've won the other ones. Just one world-class goal away from a whitewash, so to speak. But in this game in particular, Kyogo and Bernardo come up with the goods in this game, and look at Jermaine Palma trying to steal the spotlight as usual. But and like what Ross like what Ross said, Rodgers, I don't believe, and I'll be honest, he's a top level. He's not top level. He's mid mid-level for me. Probably a European caliber, but he's not world class. He doesn't for me. No. Brendan Rodgers. Palmer's not even. Palmer. He's like that fella. Did you ever seen you play Football Manager and your scout gives you a scout report and it's like he's half a star potential, but he could reach maybe 2.5. That's what Palmer is to me. He's not good enough in my opinion, right?
So is this the game we're going to talk about where Bernabeu took the first choice left back slot for Greg Taylor? Then this game,
if you want. But talk to me, James. The whole uproar about Rodgers and the defeats, the big games, he still manages to win.
That's the thing, though. I know we've went on to Hearts and Kilmarnock were kind of setting the best of the rest, essentially. But the games against Rangers, we slipped up against Hearts, we slipped up against Kilmarnock, but the games against Rangers, strangely, it was always the games that I went into, I wouldn't say with the most confidence, but the most belief that we would turn up. It was always the kind of lesser teams that we were struggling against. Like we say, with Drawn with St Johnstone, we were struggling to break teams down for a period. So getting into the games, like his record is brilliant. I agree with you. He isn't an elite level manager. He's with it. He's probably like Ross's argument with James Forrest in it. He's a legend, but he's not a legendary legend. There's other legends, so he's kind of rung below that. It's the same idea with Rodgers, but no. His record against Rangers is the one thing. Even through the kind of bad times earlier in the season, like we were saying, like the game at Ibrox as well. And in this period, obviously, the performances weren't great. That was the one thing that always took comfort in, that I knew we would turn up against them because his record against them is absolutely brilliant.
Mid-drink, I hate when that happens. So, you know, I was in a restaurant with my kids the other day, right? And I was walking past the waiter who served us, right? But I didn't realise she was taking a drink of her water, obviously because they're flat out. And I was like, "Thank you, we'll see you later." And she turned round to me, right? And the biggest squeak came out of her mouth because it was filled with water. She was like, "Okay," trying to keep the water in instead of going on the floor. But it is so awkward when people stop mid-drink and you're like, "I thought you were going to continue." But no, James, I do agree. The biggest games that he does show up, and I think we're Anthony Dunn said managers come to win games like this, and you're mad because you're mad. It's such a right. He says, "I think the football is there to watch. Lots of decisions have been head scratching, and his passive nature to the signings. I think most managers come here and win the league for $3 million a year, and that's just kind of come back to yourself." But if you want to mix that in, Ross, with another Derby victory going into the January transfer window, which again, Bernardo has been, as you said, you like him as a player, and just getting that victory and Kyogo getting that victory again was vital in the league running when we look back on
it. Well, I'll talk about the comment first and listen. I get what he's saying in terms of the football. It has been dire to watch, but in the last sort of period of the season, I think we've seen, certainly in that Rangers game, I think all the evidence you needed that Brendan Rodgers' style of football was starting to come to the fore is how similar Matt O'Reilly's goal against him was to Stuart Armstrong's goal against him 4 or 5 years, or how many years ago it was. It was very similar, and I think for me you can see his style starting to come through, and he's had players, and all the players that are our best players at his disposal, and that is why it's coming to the fore now. But that's me going into a personnel route again, and I'm going to stay away from that. But in
personnel
terms of
structure
that,
and listen.
Aye, I know. But in terms, listen, I take your mum's points on board. That's his opinion.
My mum
I differ from that. Oh no way. But it's his opinion, or she. I don't know what it is. But oh, I don't. But anyway, in terms of that New Year derby, that was another. If I remember right, The year derby was the second derby of the season. That was another game we were going into where we didn't have all our squad. I don't remember that as vividly for some reason as I do the first game going into Ibrox as to how I felt. But again, we've came up trumps in that game and our big players. I think that has been the real difference in terms of Celtic and Rangers season. I've said a few times before and after the Glasgow derbies this season that there wasn't a lot between the teams, and I did believe that. Certainly after the first two games, and going into the third game, I probably still believed it. But we went up 2-0 against Rangers at Parkhead in the game at New Year. Two great goals. Bernardo scores the opener with a tremendous volley, and then you go into the second half and you're like, it's only 1-0, they're still in this. Then Kyogo comes up with that moment early in the second half, and you think, right, 2-0 at home, that takes the game away for them. But then we all know it's that cliche that we've said all season about basically all the Rangers Celtic games. It is that the games have been in isolation, have been the story of our season overall in terms of we're looking good and then we have a stutter and we let somebody back into it and then we come good again. But we go 2-0 in that game and you think that's us taking it away from them, but then we let them back into it and then it's nervy towards the end. But Bernardo comes up with that moment and I think he's been
brilliant goal, by the way.
It was a tremendous goal. To get his the technique, to get his sort of body over it, and it was coming up at an awkward height and he gets his foot high enough where he can get it over the ball and keep the ball down, and he arrows it, he hits it true, and it's a great finish. Keeper's no chance. But it was when you look at that, it was two games against Rangers where you're going into it and you've not got your full team, but you come out the other side with 2 wins. But the 2 wins that you've got were because of probably 3 moments of absolute quality, and that is why I've made the point before, and I'll make it again, that they were moments of absolute quality, and that was the difference. Certainly in the first 2 games, that was the difference, because we have the better players at the top end of the pitch to take the game away for Rangers, albeit they can compete with us over the piece. In the big moments, we've got the players that come up with the goods and they don't. And that's been the difference, certainly in the first 2 games. For me, I think we've played better than them. But we'll probably go on it. But in the game at Parkhead, the game at Ibrox, for the most part, we played better than Rangers in the 2 games. I don't think we turned up as well in the cup final, but I still think, having watched it back, that over the piece, we probably deserved the win. But the first 2 games, it was because of our quality at the top end of the pitch that won us the game.
Yeah, and I think you're right, the reference that over the piece. I know I would actually include all 5 games in this aspect of things. We probably deserve to win them all, including that free straw, which we'll come on to. And we moved into January, James. I remember we discussed this at length, and I think you and Ross and Willie had some amazing back and forth debates about Rodgers saying about he wants quality, he wants first team ready players in a January transfer window. And what he came away with was Nicholas Kuhn, who had a dental issue, which didn't see him perform to his optimal levels until towards the end of the season. And even just saying best levels, he wasn't even that great. A couple of fleeting appearances where he looked okay. And Adamida came in to the team. And in around that time, and again, I don't, before we come on to individual games that impact both players did have on the squad and team, Rodgers said he wanted 4 quality players. Callum McGregor even said this before the January transfer window, we're looking for quality players and first team ready players. And it didn't happen again for whatever reason.
That's what I was saying earlier about you're a brave man to have any faith in our board, regardless of how obvious it seems. I mean, how many could have watched the first kind of half of this season up to January and thought we need to sign only 2 players, and it's debatable, certainly in Kuhn's case, whether or not it was a first team ready player. And as I say, can negative hat on, but that's why I can't get carried away with this summer. If we didn't do it last summer, then we didn't do it in January. Then you're a brave man to put your faith in the board. But look, the Adamida thing obviously went on to be a fantastic signing, and I actually think I'm sure I had an argument with Gav on here. I don't know if it was yourself, it was on that night as well, Stephen, hosting, but I like Miovski, and we hadn't signed it at that point. And my point was we need to sign somebody kind of that stature, a bit more physical than Kyogo, because it is a Rodgers type striker. And that wasn't me saying that Kyogo was a bad player. I obviously love Kyogo as much as the next person, but we just needed that a bit more kind of focal point for me, if we're going to play the way Rodgers wants to play. And I don't know if maybe we were getting our wires crossed, but Gav was kind of saying that he didn't think Miovski would be like a first team type player. But my argument back was, well, he does come in, and when he first signed, he played every game, and obviously the impact at Hibs and obviously amongst other games as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see us revisit that in the summer. But also, I know there's been rumours, I wouldn't be overly surprised if Kyogo was to leave in this summer. I wouldn't want that to happen, but I certainly think moving forward they'll probably have a wee bit of a kind of like a secondary role. I don't see him being first choice striker next season. I could be totally wrong. That's not me saying I don't think he's good enough or anything at all like that. I just think the way the second half of the season played out, I think Rodgers would favour that more kind of physical presence up front. But to get back to January, look, again, I'm not going to rewrite history. I was raging coming out of January. I wanted us to sign a goalkeeper. Hart at that point, he hadn't announced he was retiring yet, I don't think, or at least he hadn't certainly hit the form. They obviously went on to hit, arguably played of the season in the second half of the season, but I was looking for us to sign a new goalkeeper, a left back. I could go through the team 1 to 11 to be honest, and we'll probably highlight in most positions, but I just definitely didn't feel that we'd done enough in January. And again, it kind of shadowed the summer, and just that kind of deflated like a missed opportunity again in the transfer window.
I mean, like what James is saying, another missed opportunity, and in the comments, I think it was Paddy Boy was saying, I suspect we'll have a goalkeeper on a free, McKenna on a free, I fucking hope not, and Armadi for 3.5 million. I know we're linked to him, but before we come on to new recruits, I think Paddy as well was saying, I think that's Paddy Boy from the CSP. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's great to have you along watching. But go back to the January transfer window, Nicholas Kuhn, albeit had a good pedigree coming through Bayern Munich and Ajax and things of that nature in their youth academies, and he had a decent season at Rapid Vienna. We bring him in, and then the kind of uproar around Alameda being Norwich's third choice striker at that time. And I can't, again, it's on here for all to see. I was absolutely fuming when we done that. Because I was off to thinking, could you get a Bojan Miovski in, proven goal scorer, can only really improve in his career? Can you get someone else in, apart from Ida? But then again, Rodgers, I think, pulled that signing out of his backside with contacts that he had in English football. And obviously known Ida when he was a young boy, and I think he was interested in him when he was at Leicester City. But as I said to James there, when you're talking about 4 quality signings, when that was the narrative we were all led to believe was going to happen in January, or maybe not led to believe, but the thinking that we were all kind of put towards was they're going to be looking for these 4 pillars, 4 guys to come in and take first team spots and be first team ready. It just didn't happen. And there's people in the comments already saying that it doesn't trust it going forward for the summer recruitment. Hagen would trust him this time, saying that the recruitment's in place, blah, blah, blah. And then it all fell apart after that with Mark Lowell and I think it was Craig Strachan, I think his name is, the golf shop manager who was our chief European scout. It's absolutely incredible. He kicks the bucket, he's away. It was a shambles. Let's be fair here. Both winters, really, but January in particular, because Rodgers had time to evaluate the squad and still didn't get what he was looking for.
Well, he didn't. Of course he didn't. I think we all know that because he talked about, as you've said there, four players of quality. But I think he also said at the time, listen, it was maybe an excuse, but I feel like it was genuine. I know people hate this saying, but it's a renowned, well-known fact that in January, James is laughing because he knows what I'm going to say.
It's coming. It's coming.
Difficult to sign players in January. It is more difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible, but if Celtic are wanting to sign players who are going to improve the team, right, in that sort of bracket that we're short in, then they players they're going to be important assets to their club who they're with, right? Similar to Celtic saying no to Atletico Madrid buying Matt O'Reilly. No, we need Matt O'Reilly to go and win this league. Teams who we were going to were probably saying to us, no, we don't want to let this guy go. This guy go now. He's integral to what we want to do this season. Aye, Gassy, aye. He's integral to what we want to do this season, but revisit it in the summer and we'll talk money. But right now, we're not willing to sell because he is an important player in our team. That's just how it is. Listen, you can get players in, players who are not surplus to requirements, and sometimes you can get gems who are like Matt O'Reilly, a really good player at his team in terms of MK Dons, but MK Dons are a team that are willing to sell because of where they are in the food chain, similar to Celtic. But Celtic have got money and they wanted to keep a hold of Matt O'Reilly, so they did. And if the players that Celtic wanted weren't available, Brendan Rodgers said, and I'm fully on board with this, if there's a player that you want and he's not available, you don't just get a body in just for the sake of getting a body in because the fans are in disarray and in an uproar and panicking about the season. Brendan Rodgers has remained calm. He remained calm in the January window. He remained calm in the run-in. And that is what has made us successful this season. His experience and his calmness and his nous. He knows what it takes. And I'm fully on board with Brendan Rodgers saying, right, okay, we wanted this guy, but we couldn't get him. I'm not just signing X, Y, and Z just to get a body in the door. James, I know you're choking to speak. Go for it.
Honestly, I can't disagree with you anymore. Honestly, I just think that's such a cop-out argument. Look, see in the summer, that's when we should have signed, right? Look,
100%.
Right, but and it's not even saying it with the benefit of hindsight. Like, even like obviously when we kind of joined up the group chat and all that, like me and Stephen, Jed as well, we were all moaning about players that signed in the summer, and look, I was moaning about players that signed in the summer. Now maybe that's stupid, but you could just tell fairly on they weren't signed to walk into the first team, and if you're looking to improve, and we'd heard, albeit under Ange, about how we wanted to make progress in Europe, the signings that we made in the summer were not going to be the players. It was so obvious at the time, and it bore out in fact throughout the season up until this day. Not one of them, as I say, if they left the Mora, not one of them you would bat an eyelid with, apart from Palmer. And then we get to January, and it was
by the way, I totally agree with that on the summer window.
Right, but see when we arrive in January, the O'Reilly thing, look, that for me, you're rewriting history there, because the O'Reilly deal was a loan. We never had the cash on the table. If the cash was on the table, look, it's hypothetical, but it's definitely a different conversation. The O'Reilly thing was a loan. You would need to be
fair enough. Fair enough. But it was sort of trying to make an example.
No, I understand.
But I get what you're saying.
But it's hard to sign players in January. It isn't hard to sign players in January. No, when it's hard to sign players,
It's more difficult.
It's hard to sign players in February. January's a transfer window. That is the purpose of the transfer window.
But it's more difficult to sign the quality that you want to make the team better. That was my point.
Because you're going to need to pay up for it. You're going to need to pay up for it.
No, because teams, like I've made the point already, the teams who, the level of play that we're talking about want to improve our team, they are going to be probably the best or one of the better players in the team that they're with. And if that team's going for a league title, similar to us, they'll say, right, we don't want to sell him now, but we'll revisit it in the summer because he's integral to what we want to do this season.
But that's not the market we're shortman.
How's it not?
But look at the guys we signed in the summer. Not one of them came for PSG, came for Man City, came for fucking Bayer
We're not talking about no, but I'm not talking about that level of team.
But that's what I mean. No, the link at the time was Miovski. If Miovski came into that team for 5, 6, 7 million, is he worth 5, 6, 7 million to Celtic? But in that scenario, if it's going to get a league over the line and qualify for the Champions League, and this was my point at the time, absolutely.
But maybe they approached Aberdeen and Aberdeen said no.
I know. I'm saying Miovski just because he was the link, but even amongst other players in the market we're shortman, Celtic maybe is bad or is poor a place as we found ourselves in that time. In the market that we're shortman, Celtic is still an attractive proposition for our market that we're looking for players in. Look, I get that in January, as you say, if teams are having a good season or whatever, teams will be reluctant to sell. But all that means is that you're maybe going to need to pay up a wee bit more. And see if Celtic were fucking tight.
Not necessarily.
Of course it does. If we get a bid on the table for 10 million for O'Reilly and accepted it, you wouldn't have said we could have got double that during the season, considering the season that he was having. If a player's having a good season for a club,
we wouldn't have accepted 10 million for O'Reilly.
I know, but that's my point though. So you're going to need to pay up for a player. If we like you said, the O'Reilly thing, right?
But that's not what we value O'Reilly at, and that wasn't what we valued him in January.
Aye, but my point is, the O'Reilly thing was a loan. If Atletico Madrid had come in and put down 25 million on the table and said, there's 25 million, we want to sign Matt O'Reilly, do you think Celtic would have flat out kicked that out and said, no, we're no selling in January?
I think they might have, because I think they know that the at that time as well, the unrest in the fan base, I think they know that is the one player that we couldn't and shouldn't and wouldn't have let the board away with selling.
I think it's just one of the ones we need to agree to disagree. I honestly do not. I don't think that the board would care a jot, and we've seen it through the COVID season. The board, we're customers to the board. They don't care what we think, as long as we're paying our money and turning up. That they've got our money. Do you know what I mean? It's when people talk about boycotting the games and all that. You've already paid your season book. They've got your money. You may as well go. And boycotting the merchandise and all that, it never happens. But anyway, sorry, we're going off on a tangent. But the January window, for me at least, in the market we're shortman, if they're having a good season, then you might need to put down an extra million or 2 million on the table to tempt whatever club it is that we're linked with, to tempt them away. And I think that potentially could be bore out in the summer, because they'll probably be, like Miovski is an example, but we'll probably be linked with these players again in the summer that we were linked with in January. Admittedly, no names are coming to my head now. I can't really remember them that we were linked with in January. But
Shankman, Miovski, fucking all of them. Fucking idiots.
I just...
Or the PSG players.
Aye, Bayer Leverkusen, all that. Frimpong's coming back. But no, I
fucking wish, by the way.
We're just going to need to agree to disagree, I think, because...
I never said it's hard to sign players in January. It's more difficult than it is in the summer, because teams are more willing to sell their assets, if you like, in the summer than they are mid-season in January. It's just a fact for me. I don't think it's even up for debate, that.
Not 100%, but that's why I'm saying about paying up. It's like, and again,
But if Celtic value a player at a certain value and they go in with that, then I don't.
But
I get what you're saying. Just pay a wee bit more, but
that's my point.
If you do that all the time, then where does it leave you? If you do that, all right, we'll just pay a wee bit more because that's what you think it is.
No, that's no. But I'm saying, like, how many times have we seen it? A club value a player at 5 million. Celtic put a bid in a 2.5 million. It gets rejected. It's stuff like that. So that's what I mean. If they value a player at 5 million and you're wanting the business done and you're in a title race at that point, put the money down on the table and sign whoever it is you're after. Don't gamble the title, which ultimately did. Ultimately, to be fair, it paid off, but I don't know, mate. I just
see. Really, by the way, me and you're actually having a debate here, right? And no falling out, but totally disagreeing, right, on a subject that we basically know absolutely fuck all about because we don't know what Celtic went in with, and but you know what I'm saying, eh? Like we are having a debate and disagreeing on surmising something, basically.
I just think, honestly, see, just even looking back through history, like
Stephen,
back. we'll go in the fucking. We'll go into the Hydro. Fucking, we'll sell 3 tickets or something.
Aye.
Even if we're doing the podcast, buying a
ticket. We'll be on the undercard for Novo and Kaz.
Oh, fucking hell. But nah, mate. I just to get kind of back to the season. But nah, January was a letdown for me. Aye. That's it.
All that to get there. Thanks, lads. That was actually really entertaining. Usually it's me butting heads with transfers and that, but it makes a good difference when other people have different opinions. By the way, this is the first time
Stephen, you just sat back and watched that.
I just sat back and enjoyed it. It was good viewing. Everyone else enjoyed it. And I read some welcome notes to wee James, but Big James even, I don't know. But like, let's see. Let's all calm down. We're shit at transfer windows. We're fucking tight biscuit tin mentality. That's all we are. It's all good. But look, we'll move on from that. Okay.
Thank God.
In and around that, our Scottish Cup journey started with a game with Bucky Thistle. We beat them. We beat them 5-0, and then Celtic cruised through February. With good results against Motherwell, Fleet-Run, and Dundee 7-1, which was a cracking result at home. But in and around that, James, you mentioned it. In and around that time, this fella announced his retirement, Joe Hart, and quite coincidentally, James, after he'd done it, he seemed to hit a new vein of form. I think when I look back on the podcast we were on and everyone was on, I believe it took a lot of pressure off him. It was a massive decision to make, and when he had them difficult discussions with Stevie Woods and Rodgers, he was able to relieve that kind of stress from himself that he was probably feeling. And I thought, for me, he probably played the best football of his career with Celtic in the last 3 months, and that's quite incredible to say. We've had him for 3 years. He peaked at the end, which is just fitting for Joe Hart.
Aye, but to get back to January,
fuck.
I need a pee.
I was literally to get back to January. I was wanting us to sign a goalkeeper in January. I didn't think Joe Hart was anywhere near it early on in the season. Neither was the rest of the team, to be fair. But look, as you say, since he announced his retirement, it's the best form he's showed for us. He's been absolutely brilliant on and off the park. You could listen to him all day talking about Celtic. You can tell, obviously, how much he likes it here, how much a part of his life is going to be moving forward. But the second half of the season, right up there for Player of the Year, right alongside Matt O'Reilly as well. Probably just a wee bit of a shame that he didn't actually get an award that the Player of the Year do in the circumstances. But obviously, he gets some send-off. And weirdly enough, for where I was 6 months ago, he's going to be missed next season for the form that he showed at the end of the season.
I totally agree with that. Anton Rogan comes in. Ross, the heart will go on. The Hart will go on, and it won't be at Celtic Football Club. He'll probably be an ambassador for Manchester City next season. But you have to say the impact the fella's made, and a lot of players come in, Ross, like fucking that charlatan Robbie King, fucking did my absolute boxing. See all that I support Celtic bullshit when he's run about playing for like 17 clubs and every club he signs for. I've supported him since I was a boy. No, you haven't, you prick. And then you get all these different players who come in and make a big case for playing for big clubs like Celtic or whoever. You can tell it's lies. You can tell it's outright lies. But Joe Hart come in, very kind of just come in as I said before, we needed him, he needed us. He didn't give us any bullshit statements. And in the 3 years he's been with us, especially towards the end, he absolutely loves it at this club. And you can tell the cliche statement, he does get it. The supporting him have a bond that will last for an age, for a lifetime, like James said. And he announced his retirement at the right time. And I seen someone put on Twitter about Greg Taylor coming in, and underneath that post is saying let's send Joe off with the league, and we've done that in a roundabout way. We're league champions. But Joe Hart himself, Ross, has impacted Celtic Football Club, and just not the leg. I don't know if it's a legacy, but the 3 years he was there, he definitely made a massive impact on that team.
He did. I find it really funny how it's came full circle with Joe Hart. After the first season, I'm not slagging you, but after the first season, you were
me?
Change the goalkeeper. Yeah, you wanted to change the goalkeeper, and that's fine. That's fine.
And I never said that once.
You did, and I made the case. Joe Hart's doing a fine job, doing a grand job. He'll be okay, and we kept him, and he played another season, and he done really well. We won another league title, and you wanted him gone the next summer. And listen, I go then. I did understand after the second season, I was like starting to come round to Stephen a wee bit. He is showing, and then he didn't have a great first half of the season, but then Joe Hart proved me right. He did.
You ruined me. You ruined me there. Like you ruined me.
Nah, listen, Joe Hart has been. Listen, he's not been an Arthur Boric. I would argue he's not even been a Craig Gordon. Definitely not a Fraser Forster. But in the time he's been here, he's done a really, really good job for Celtic. And as you said, Stephen, similar to when Rodgers came to Celtic the first time, sort of stars aligned. We needed him. He needed us, and in the end, it's been a match made in heaven with Joe Hart. And we've all seen that interview now on Celtic TV the other week, where he talked about it. And even the interviews after the game when we won the league title or when we got the trophy. Just the way he talks about the club, he came in. And he had no expectations. He'd played at Man City, albeit not a huge club. It's not a club that he would have grown up desperate to play for. But he was at the top of his game, and Man City were really building to go to the top of the English football. And he was the keeper that they plumped for to take them there, and he got them there. And he's had a stellar career, obviously with England. He's had his ups and downs, of course. But then he's come to Celtic. And for me, he's not played his best football of his career. But he has been an integral part of what we've wanted to do in terms of on and off the pitch. Cal McGregor, the way he talks about him, is all you need to know. Like, you're not privy to it. But the way our captain talks about Joe Hart is all you need to know. That's it, cut and dry. And he's come in, as I said, with no expectations of this club, but he's left totally in love with it, and that's what Celtic do to you. Whether you've grown up knowing all about Celtic or grown up knowing that Celtic is a team, but not understanding quite the level of the passion that people have for this club. Joe Hart's leaving, and he gets it fully, and he's in, and he's a Celtic supporter now. He was at Man City a lot longer than he was at Celtic, but for me, he can go to Man City and be an ambassador. But I think there'll be more of a special place in his heart for Celtic than there ever will be for Man City or any other club. I think he is a Celtic man now, and he loves it and he gets it. And what he said, I've said it already in previous podcasts, about I'm not going to sell this club to anybody because you can't. He'll never speak about a Man City like that. It's just different. Celtic are different from most clubs in the world. Not all clubs, but most clubs. We're in a I don't know what the word is, like, but we're in an elite bracket, if you like, where there's certain clubs that just get you. We're one of them, and Joe Hart understands it fully.
Totally fucking thought I was at Joe Hart's funeral there, man. Fucking hell.
Ross has read the eulogy. Everyone's crying.
Joe Hart's a legend.
My wee brother Daniel comes in. Celtic is the best club. You're right, Daniel. But yeah, Joe Hart announced the retirement around about that time. James, and if we go into the month of March, we're 2.5 hours in. We're only at March. This is incredible. But look,
I'm going again.
March starts with a defeat against Hearts, and if we all cast our minds back to this incident with Yang, I think that's on Cochrane, Alex Cochrane, the Hearts player, and VAR ruled that as a red card. And if we look back in hindsight now, if we look back on decisions that we've seen since that high boot, that shouldn't have been a red card. No chance in it. It impacted the game, but again, we get turned over by Hearts. I still believed at the time we should have put up a better fight with 10 men than what we did. And I think on the podcast we had a massive discussion in the round that people disagreeing. And I don't actually know if anyone agreed with me, to be honest, but I still think we should have possibly drew or won that game if we were in top form. We didn't. We succumbed to another defeat against them at Tynecastle. And then again, it sends aspects of support and media in the overdrive.
With benefit of hindsight, that game was the turning point. Obviously, the way the
You've said this before. Yeah, it's been it was the turning point.
With the benefit of hindsight, but after the game, I was in the exact same boat as yourself. It was never a red card, but even at that, we've bet better teams than Hearts with 10 men before, especially under Rodgers as well. And obviously, they lost to Motherwell on the Saturday. Then we were at Tynecastle on the Sunday, and it just felt at that point as if it was like they're gaining his chances now. The kind of honeymoon period's over with Clement. They're gaining his chances now, and we're still no taking them. And as I say, benefit of hindsight, that was the catalyst for obviously what we went on to achieve. But at that point, I was still asking questions of the manager. Albeit you maybe cut him some slack on that day because of the circumstances, but still to find ourselves in the position overall that we did at that point, it was a shambles, to be honest. And there was, I'll say it was Ross that said it because he's not here and he can't argue with me, but there was a notion going about at the time. There was some people saying it was a free hit, and I can't remember who it was that said it. But there was
you dick, you folded. Oh, it was incredible.
No, I generally carried. Somebody in the group chat did say it though. It was a free hit that day because they'd get bet the day prior, and I just see it as the exact opposite of that. This is an opportunity that we need to take, and obviously we didn't. As I say, benefit of hindsight, that was the turning point, but at the time I was still, as I say, raging and asking questions of the manager.
Why do you think it was a turning point? I'm actually interested to hear that.
Well, I think it was a run about that time. In fact, it might have even been in his post-match interview, but that was the quote about we'll write our own story, I think. Was that run about that time, or maybe just before, or just after?
I think it was, yeah.
So obviously you don't know what's been said behind closed doors. Like, to be totally honest, I didn't see it. I didn't see it happening. I'd say down here I didn't see it happening, but whatever's happened behind closed doors, there's been a rallying of the troops, be it that siege mentality off the back of the writing our own story comments. We've heard, was it McGregor was saying that with stuff pinned up in the dressing room that the media had wrote about us as well, and for whatever reason, something just clicked, and that's when I'll start being positive for here on in. We're only 2 hours and 40 minutes in, but I can start being positive.
Listen, once we hit 6 or 7 hours, we'll have about 2 viewers and it'll be good crack. It's fine. It's all good.
I'll be a fucking lighter for that.
I will try and speed it up. Don't worry. But I was speaking to the James about this incident and the game we lost in March. It was the first game of that month, and it was defeated Tynecastle 2-0, 10 men. Obviously, Yang gets sent off, and I think someone said in the comments there the beating. I think it was Kennedy. Let me get the comment. I don't want to be rude. James Kennedy said about the beating wasn't VAR that day, and that tells you all you need to know. And I think if we look at incidents since that, and looking back again on the season with other teams involved, there was high boots within the season, weren't punished. Yangs was punished, and it was so flimsy of a high boot. It's incredible. There was no malice at all. He just tried to attempt for the ball. But I was saying to James, and I think he was agreeing with me, I was of the persuasion we still should have put up a fight, a draw, or win in that game. But we were just awful from start to finish. But then James came back with the whole thought that it started the siege mentality, and we kind of kicked on from that Tynecastle defeat. But he said there was someone in the group that said it was a free hit. He said it was you, but then he was a shite bag when they came back and said it wasn't. So,
not to be fair, actually, I don't think
was it you who said that it was a free hit?
That game was a free hit.
Because I can't remember who it was, but somebody did say it. I'll find it later on.
Definitely wasn't me, because that's just mental to say that it was a free hit.
Probably done. Absolutely. But how did you feel that game anyway?
Well, you said there that we were poor from start to finish in that game. I disagree with that. I think we started the game really well. We get the penalty. People argue it wasn't a penalty. I felt it was, but and that's not me, because I can admit when things are for and against, it's not through tinted glasses. But I thought it was a penalty, and there's guys on our podcast and in our group chat that have said they felt it wasn't a penalty, that it was soft, and that's fair enough. I get that point of view. We go and miss the penalty. Ida misses it, and
he's shite,
that's no, but he misses that penalty, and at that time, you go up on 0, it's a totally different game. But we don't score the penalty like we didn't in numerous occasions this season. But then, for me, the game changes on that Yang sending off. For me, it is. There's no way in the world that's in. I get it's a high boot. I do. But he doesn't. There's no malice in it. He's trying to flick the ball away, and I don't remember if he definitely touches the ball, but I don't think he kicks the Hearts player with any force. And the Hearts player, he doesn't put his head right down, but he puts his head down a bit. And for me, I don't see how a booking was the on-field decision, and for me, it was a booking all day, every day. To then change it to a red card was a disgrace. But
yeah.
Okay, that's happened, right? So you're down to 10 men, and you're trying to get to half time, and then we'll change things up a wee bit. And we're doing okay in the game. Hearts are getting the majority of the game. You expect that, because we've went down to 10 men and we're trying to readjust or whatever. And Hearts have had the most of the play, but we are still fair, not comfortable, but not even fairly comfortable, because they did have a couple of chances, but we've defended okay. And then comes the moment with the Awata handball. If you remember the Burnaby one at home to Motherwell the season before, I think it was, that was really bad. It was really, really bad. He wasn't even looking at it. This was as bad. And listen, I don't watch every other team in the country's games week in, week out like I do Celtic. Why would I? But I'd be very surprised if there was 2 worse penalty decisions given against any other team in the league than they two. It was absolutely appalling, and it changes the game, the whole narrative of the game in an instant, because you're already down to 10 men, you're almost at half time, and you get that decision through VAR, by the way. Nobody sees it on the field, because how would you? It's so inconspicuous, if you like, but it was a horrific decision. Like, to watch so many different replays of that and come up with the decision that was a penalty kick, for me, is bizarre, if not fucking cheating. But it was bizarre. It was, but that changes the game, the narrative of the game in an instant. And then
your man's coming at you here.
Ross, mate, I need what you're smoking. We were really poor after being down to 10 men. We weren't comfortable in the game. Pulled over. Listen, I don't. I've sort of alluded to the fact that I wasn't saying we were comfortable before the penalty. I was saying that we were doing okay, but Hearts, they still had opportunities in the game. But we defended okay for the most part. But they did have 1 or 2 chances. But that penalty changes the full narrative of the second half, because if we get in at half time at 0-0, is the point I'm trying to make, that then Rodgers Disney, I think, I can't mind exactly what he done, but he played, I think he took a midfielder off and he put Maeda on or something. I can't remember exactly, but he doesn't make that substitution at that point in the game if it's 0-0, and we regroup and we stay in the game, and we play with more people in the middle of the park, and it gives us a better opportunity. But going 1-0 down, he has to make a different substitution off the back of that terrible decision. And from there on in, it was passing into the wind, basically. That's my point. I'm not disagreeing with what your ma says, but
such a name, isn't it?
For me, between the Yang sending off and the penalty kick, I accept that Hearts were the better team by a distance. I don't disagree with what he's saying there, and they had a couple of opportunities, and Celtic were just trying to stay in the game, but they were doing it, and they almost got to half time, and then that would allow them to regroup, but it was taken away from them in that terrible decision.
It was a shocking decision, and I think the VAR thing has come up time and time again. It'd be quite interesting to see what the holy man Willie Collum changes, as he's obviously the new head of operations within referees in Scotland since Crawford Allen was a cheating bastard. But I don't know probably nothing is going to change. I mean, nothing will change. But sure, within that, look, we started off March with a defeat against Hearts, but we beat Livingston 3-0 away in a notoriously difficult venue, and also beat them to advance to the Scottish Cup semi-final. So we're into April now, and I was over this time, Ross, with yourselves at Graces, Greenburn Graces with Willie. What a fantastic day it was! An unbelievable game. I'll start with yourself, and again, we were talking about this game getting into it as a must not lose. I'm going to put out there really quickly, I thought it should have been a must win. I was furious, fucking furious when we drew that game, because we went fucking 1-0, 2-1, whatever it was, and then 3-2. And then the game management side of things again came back to bite us, albeit it was a world-class goal from Matondo. You can't really defend against them things, but Yang was weak, Johnson was weak, he lost his man in the round that. But it's this game I'm talking about, is the free each game, when Maeda opened the score, and I think it was after 28 seconds, Ross, and we were elated. The celebrations were incredible. I think at that time, Ryan, who's in the comments as well, I was about, now this was the start of the game, I was about 6 pints deep. The rum was open at half time. It was magic. It was a magic day all round at Greenburn Graces with Willie and all you lads as well. But how did you feel about that, the outcome of that game? And obviously the Clementine moral victory shit and the lap of honour going round and clapping the fans and giving it the fucking chest pumps and all this and think that they were in the ascendancy. Yes, it took me a while to calm down and realise what you all were saying in terms of it's still in our hands. But were you calm at that moment in time, drawing for the Eats at Ibrox? Did you think we got a great result that day?
Had we drawn the game like 1-1 or something, and it was like they'd went up 1-0 and we'd got a goal in the 60th minute or something, right? You'd be more calm, certainly a lot more calm, because going into that game, unlike yourself, it was always a must not lose. It was never a must win, because if we didn't lose the game, it was still in our hands. Everybody knew that. But the manner in which we drew the game, I totally understand why people would be really dejected. Not to the level that you were dejected, Stephen, and that was the league done.
It was horrible. That was horrible.
But
I was feeling so bad.
That was in the immediate aftermath. And that's fine to be like that. It's just passion. But for me, I knew fairly soon that I was like, it's still a draw. We should have won the game. We should have been well out of sight, but we let them. I was going to say we let them back in. We didn't. A penalty decision that was, for me, never a penalty in a million years. Let them back in, and they took that opportunity. By the way, and I have to say, the way Tavernier stuck that penalty away was absolutely sensational under that pressure. It was unbelievable penalty, and so was Matt Riley's in that game. But
Panenka.
At the end of the day, you take how the game panned out away. The end result was still a draw. It was 3-3. It was still in our hands. They had still to come to Parkhead. So for me, after everything had went with this team and everything had been said about this team and the narrative that had been painted about this team, we went to Ibrox and we got a result again that, for all the world, outside Celtic and outside most of the fan base, was we were going there to lose. Rangers were going there to basically win the league title on the day. Celtic were just turning up. Celtic turned up. They went up 2-0. Rangers were allowed back into it. But we got our draw, which at the very least is what we needed. And I knew in myself, after watching all the other games that we played against them, that them coming to Parkhead with no fans, I just felt there was no way that they could beat us. It transpired, obviously, that they dropped points in 2 games before they came there, which put us in an even stronger position. But for me, that draw, they were coming to Parkhead. I felt we'd beat them, and I still felt the league, it definitely was in our hands, obviously mathematically. But in my opinion, I think I even said in a podcast at that point after that game that I had it sort of 51%, 49% in our favour of winning the league title after that game. And obviously,
what was that, about 30% or something?
You were 70-30 or something. You were fucking. You'd give up the ghost at that point, kid.
But like you say, it's passion, and sometimes your emotions clear your judgment. And I do agree with what you said. There's someone in the comments as well. James was saying we could have been 6-0 up at half time in that free each game. I thought we were sublime in the first half, and I remember me and Ross were sitting looking at each other at one point, being like, we could fucking tank these today. And I think Terry comes in. Terry off the PMP, the post-match piss with Russell Bhoys. I honestly think if we won that day, they would have beat both Ross County and Dundee. They thought they had won it and let their guard down and got sparked out. Do you think along them lines as well, James?
I was the same as Ross going into it. It was a must not lose game. Obviously the way the game played out was a bit of a kick in the bollocks. Obviously conceding in the last minute, but the first half as well obviously plays into that, because we could and probably should have been a fair few goals up. I mean, even if we scored one there and we're getting at half time at 3-0, I don't think they come back for that. I don't think they pull it back. But if you're anti-head balls and all that part, it didn't happen. But we drew, and that was the turning point for me. That was after that game.
Hold on, you said the turning point was the Hearts game.
No, I'm saying hypothetically, looking back, the turning point was the Hearts game. But when we drew with them after the game at full time, that was genuinely the first time for the full season I thought, right, we're going to go on and win this now. Everything's kind of in our favour, and it made it all the weirder when, like you're saying, like after the game, I get like they'll get around and applaud supporters, but when it zoomed in on the manager and he's beating his chest, and it was like legend in your own living room stuff. It was like reminiscent of Gerrard when they bet us at New Year and they won the league in the New Year game at Parkhead. And it was just, I'm like, that's going to come back and bite you in the arse. I just couldn't understand it. Even my mates that were at the game, Rangers supporters, obviously, they're like, it's a better result for you than it is for us. Like, it's not the end of the world, because obviously, from their point of view, they still had to play us again. But no, for me, that was, after that game, avoiding defeating that game, I thought, no, we'll do them at Parkhead. And that's the first time I felt confident to say that we'd go on and win it.
And it's quite funny and quite fitting. As I said before, they didn't even win their own league that they made up. Anthony Dunn, Ross is going to miss the flight to Germany at this rate. I told everyone it would be a long... Listen, this is longish. The Seville rewind went 3.5 hours, or nearly 4 hours, so we're not quite at that territory yet. We might get there, but look, we're all having a bit of crack. Ross is hanging on by a thread, but we're going to get to the end, don't worry. In regards to that, right, so if we fast forward a wee bit, so obviously April kicked off with that game, must not lose. Celtic done that. We also advanced to the Scottish Cup final. Hard-fought victory and penalty kicks. Joe Hart obviously played a huge part in that one. And then Celtic go through the month of May unbeaten. And if we come to that final derby game, James, coming straight back to yourself, obviously we had a player playing for Rangers at that point, Lundstrom. His head was gone. And he effectively sealed the title for ourselves, obviously coming on the Kilmarnock game in a wee bit. But as you said, bringing them back to Parkhead after that free each game, 2-1, a victory, basically in a roundabout way, meant the title was coming home to Paradise.
Aye, that was it. And that's probably the most confident, which is strange considering how much more than I've just done for the last 3 years, but that was probably the most confident I've ever felt going into a game against them. And look, I know we were talking earlier, somebody had put in the comments about Rodgers earning his money. He is pissing like a fucking racehorse tonight, man.
He can't handle it. Either way, he's gone.
But no, we were talking about Rodgers earning his money, and look, I'll give Rodgers his due. And that was where, for me, in that kind of last couple of months of the season, that was where Rodgers earned his money. A lesser manager would have totally folded under the pressure for ourselves, the support, for the media, for everything. But he just kind of took it in his stride, and ultimately he made us look daft for everything we'd said prior. But no, I definitely.
But you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to question things.
100%. You know what I mean? You're just calling what you're seeing.
He can't handle it no more. That's poor, isn't it?
But nah, I'd never been more confident getting into a game against them than I was that day. Obviously, we went out, got the job done. Lundstrom obviously makes it that bit easier. But to be fair, in the last 10 minutes, it looked as if we were trying our best not to win it with some of the way we were carrying on with the ball. But I go to the other line and obviously never look back for there.
Yeah, 100%. And as well, Ross, you look at that Strange of the Doctor team, look good getting into that game. Squad was fit, hyped and prepared, and it showed on the park. And we won 2-1, but it could have been at a counter, albeit the last 10 minutes was a bit of an edgier seat experience. But again, we steal the title. Lundstrom scored the final goal at put the final nail in their coffin, like you said earlier.
Aye, what a beautiful goal it was. That
It was very well worked.
diagonal for Carter Vickers was sublime. The touch for Maeda was somebody else's leg, and then he plays the ball across, and Lindstrom. Listen, I think he tries to blame the referee for you were in my road when I was running back, but he's got millions of time to sort his feet out. For me, it was bizarre. It actually was such a. I felt like at the time, and even watching it back numerous times, that it wasn't like one of the ones where he can't do nothing about that. It actually looked like he meant it. It was he could have sorted his feet out a lot quicker than what he did for me. And obviously he didn't mean it, but it was absolutely shite. But I'll take it all day long. It was a really good build-up play for Celtic, and they struck quiet while the iron was hot, if you like. They'd already scored, and they got that second goal, and then you thought for there that they were going to go on and take the game away for Rangers big time. Go and win 3-4-5. Again, as we've said before, it didn't transpire like that. It was the story of our season again, but the story of our season is up, down, get in front, let teams back in. But in the end, we wrote the story, and it was a story we can all get on board with. We won the league, we won the Scottish Cup, and it's absolutely beautiful.
The first part of your story, there sounded like intercourse, but you know, it's life, isn't it? Up, down,
Oh,
and
for God's sake!
surely that's in and out.
Well, I mean, look, I'm not going to do official representation of what I actually mean in my head. Okay,
go and do it. Let me see your quote. Let's see what your form's like.
I would say I'm probably more of a rigid number 6 at the minute, stiff. That's not no.
Wow.
That's not that. But in regards to that, James, like Abelgard, that's exactly who I am, Paul McFarlane. Look at that bird pun he's in. I was coming there. Wow. But you look at that, and we go to Kilmarnock. We had to seal the title. People saying get a draw. Pundits were saying Celtic would be lucky to escape without experiencing defeat. But we done more than that. We absolutely demolished them. Alameda, probably one of the best centre forward performances I've seen all season, or in a good lot of seasons, in terms of holding the ball up, bringing others into play, and it eventually led to this. Celtic sealed the title at Rugby Park, and what amazing things to see on the TV and all the players getting involved in that. But the game itself, James, went into it full of confidence at a notoriously hard venue, and they've already done us over twice in the season. But as we said before, the big games, the kind of games where the pressure comes, the kind of games where it means something. Rodgers knows how to get the team up, and we absolutely dismantled Kilmarnock that night.
Aye, and no many teams, Kilmarnock have obviously had a good season, and no many teams have done that to them, especially up there. They've had a good record at home. But no, that's probably the best performance, the most complete performance we put in for the full season. As you say, Adamida was different class. You can only imagine how much better they've been with Miovski. But anyway, but no, absolutely fantastic.
Miovski, did you say?
Aye, absolutely fantastic that night. To a man. I mean, the game was done after a quarter of an hour. But aye, brilliant.
He forgets who scored, doesn't he? That's why he can't elaborate on the goal scores. But Ross, what about yourself? That game, 5-0, Rugby Park. It was a good statement win. It's one of them ones where it's like what Roger said after was all the negative shit is kind of spun on its head, and the Celtic turn up. We write our own story. We get the league title back to paradise, and it's like fuck yous at the end of the day.
I thought we were outstanding on the night, and everybody says because it's a prominent game that it's probably the most complete performance. I can't disagree with it, but I felt, and I said that, I put it on Facebook and all that, maybe get carried away, but when we beat Dundee 7-1, I was like, we're back. We weren't back at that point because we were still with fits and starts in terms of performance level, but the 7-1 game at Dundee, I thought we were brilliant, but on the night at Kilmarnock with what was at stake, absolutely outstanding. And my brother, he's a football fan. He's not a massive Celtic fan, but his wife is a massive Celtic fan. He's got 3 wee boys now, and they're all big Celtic fans. They're obsessed with football. So my brother has started getting more into football again. He starts texting me about Celtic, and he texted me that night, and he was like, "Fucking hell, this is a proper performance for Celtic tonight. Like, when it really matters, when it's at the fore, when it's at stake to win the league title." He's like, this was early doors. I think we're 2-0 up, and he texts me, it's got to be like 6 or 7 tonight. They're absolutely brilliant. And I was like, you're good when our Gary, who doesn't really give a shit, is texting you and getting right into it. We were really good that night. And our Gary, it was testament to that, texting me when he never texts me about Celtic.
Yeah. And what do you think about Edith that night? And Paul McFarlane, another Edith.
I thought he was absolutely outstanding. You said it, Stephen. One of the most complete performances, or striker performances, in a Celtic jersey, certainly this season, if not for many seasons. The way he held the ball up, the way he was strong, he was physical. What we needed on the night against that Kilmarnock team, it's what we've been missing against that Kilmarnock team in previous games. And everything that we wanted him to be that night, he was. And by the way, I've made the case about Adam Ida, saying that I'm not sure if we should sign him, because I don't think he does enough in games. But what I will say is, over the piece, he's shown that he is a finisher. He knows where the goal is, and he's as cool as ice when it comes to the big moments. He's got it. He's strong, and for a guy who is strong and tall, he's quite light in his feet. He's got a really good touch. He can run with the ball, and he's got a turny pace for a big guy as well.
Yeah,
he's no like absolutely rapid, but for a big guy, he can shift. So I actually now look back, I kind of laugh at myself a wee bit, as if, were you just doubling down, like, because you weren't sure at first, and then the more Anthony was like pushing for it and really like saying, well, he was obviously going overboard and going over the score. But
you mean Anthony Dunn?
I obviously got what he was saying, but I think because he was going so over and being so into like signing him, I think I just sort of doubled down a wee bit against that. But when you look at what he's done over the piece, he's been outstanding. And I've said it a million times in this podcast. I said when he came in, everybody was raging that he was coming in, Norwich third striker. And similar to the summer transfer window, where I wasn't want to judge guys straight away, I done the same with him. And my line all the time was, if he comes in and gets between 6 to 10 goals, then he's been a really good loan signing. And I think he got 9, 10 goals. It was a tremendous loan signing. Absolutely tremendous. And I cannot praise the guy enough for what he done for January, or for the end of January, start of February until now. He kept us in a league title race for sort of February into March, and then when it mattered, obviously Kyogo and guys like that obviously stepped up to but he won us a Scottish Cup, and then he played a big part in getting us over the line in the league. A tremendous signing who I wouldn't hesitate to sign now. Obviously, I don't think I would pay any more than £6 million. I think £6 million is top end what he's worth. If we had to go to 7, then James will tell you, just go that extra million if you want the guy. Only Giant. But no, listen, I would pay the money for him. I would pay the money for him if we can get him. But for me, I think the biggest stumbling block now is the fact that Norwich didn't get promoted. I think that they've got a new manager coming in. He'll want to oversee his full squad. So if we are going to get him, it'll probably be later in the window. Can we wait that long to get another striker in? I don't think we're in the position to do that. But if we can get him in early enough, then by all means do it, because we know what he can do in a Celtic jersey, and that's a massive thing. But it's going to be a tough one. It really is. But hopefully we can get him. But who knows? Time will tell.
Time will tell, indeed. And we're in 3 hours, 10 minutes. What a podcast so far. Everyone is enjoying it. Still 80 live. So a wee bit to go, James. A wee bit to go. Like, tiny bit. We're nearly there, as Paul McFarlane said. Don't be worrying. Basically, the kind of round off the title and the Scottish League. James, back in paradise, was celebrated with a 3-2 win against St Mirren. Funny enough, Palma got the last goal. But Kenny, yourself, I'm pretty sure you were there at the stadium. What was your overwhelming feeling? Obviously, getting that season over you, was your overriding emotion? And basically, in a roundabout way, was this our hardest league win in a good few years anyway?
Definitely the hardest in a good few years. In terms of trophy day itself, trophy day always is what it is when obviously it's won. The game pretty much gets in the way. Everybody's just there for the celebrations. But obviously it was great to see the best signing of the summer putting in a match-winning man of the match performance. Clinical back post finish under pressure, especially at that stage in the game, with the game at 2 each.
I felt it, didn't
in the game as well. I think that took him into double figures for goals and assists if he wasn't already there. But that was brilliant, and it's probably poor management on Rodgers' part that he didn't give him any game time in the Scottish Cup final. But after trophy day, biggest day of the season at Parkhead. And that's your man of the match, your match winner.
2 seconds. Bounce it off, Ross, when you're finished. I need a pee. I've been holding this in for nearly half an hour.
But no, trophy day, as I say, it is what it is, and it's you're just there for the celebrations. Again, probably wasn't their best performance. Obviously, 3-2. We 1-0 down and 2-1 down, weren't we, that day? And then brought it back to 3-2. As I say, the game just kind of gets in the way. Everybody's just there for the party after it. Obviously, get the win 3-2. Celebrations after it were excellent. Some of the stuff on Celtic TV, obviously the interviews and that as well. And then for that point on, you're just full of confidence going into the Scottish Cup final. What were you? Where did you see it?
In terms of the
St Mirren game?
The game the St Mirren game? Well, I actually watched it in the house. I was wanting to go out for it, but I hadn't been well all week, if you mind right. And I just was like, I'm going to have a day in the house. But it was really nice outside that day. So I had like my telly can swivel. So I had it swiveled so I could sit in the decking and sit in the sun and just watch it. But I wanted to go out, but I'd actually, to be fair, I'd done my celebrating the week before. Where had we sealed it again? Oh, the Kilmarnock game. It wasn't even that, actually. It was the Rangers game. We beat Rangers to go 6 points clear with 6 to play for. And I'd done most of my celebrating then, because I don't normally do things like that, because it wasn't mathematically done. But we won that game. I can't remember exactly what I put on, but I posted on Facebook, and it was essentially saying we'd won, that was the league done or whatever. And I left myself wide open because Rangers then went and won their game, and it was back to 3 points. We had to go to Rugby Park, and I mean, you know how we've struggled there. Going into that Rugby Park game, I was like, oh, fuck this here, maybe we'll drop points. But we went into that game and we blew them away, blew Rangers away. And the St Mirren game, as you say, James, it gets in the road of the thing that everybody's there for is to lift the league trophy. But in terms of the game, obviously, aye, lovely. Can't see that enough. But in terms of the game, you go into it and you know that they're going to make changes because we've got the cup final against Rangers on the horizon, and Stephen Welsh comes in, Navrocki comes in, and I've been a big defender of Stephen Welsh. I've said, and my case has been for so long, and I think it's a valid case. My case has been Stephen Welsh comes in out the cold most of the time, and I never ever see him making an absolute howler, a glaring mistake where it costs a goal. But oh my God, that was probably the worst piece of defending I've seen in a long time. Every single thing about it was wrong. It was absolutely shocking, and I was like, "What are you doing to me here, man?" But it was so bad. It was everything he could have done wrong, he done wrong, and listen, and I know my wee pad slipped there.
That sounds so wrong.
But
no chunks.
We got there in the end again. We're not trying to go over the line. We're already over the line, but we're normally when we lift the league trophy and we win at home, we go and win 4, 5, 6, 7 in previous seasons as we've done, but this season it didn't transpire like that. We won 3-2. We go over the line, but we go over the line just in that game, and it dampens it a wee bit if you don't win. And I was desperate for us to win the game. We did eventually, but it was a wee bit shite on the day.
I think what James is saying though, trophy day is just a celebration. You're looking to get that game over quickly, win, and obviously losing. I mean, Celtic have dropped points and fucking before trophy day doesn't dampen the Spurs that much as long as the league title's back in paradise. And look quickly, James, the attention turned to the Scottish Cup final against Sevco, the first time in since 2002. Obviously, they died, so this is a new entity. We met them in the Scottish Cup final. Look, everyone was building this up to be an absolute masterclass of a show, of a Glasgow Derby game, goals galore. But it turned out it was a 1-0 victory, very cagey affair, very little chances for both teams. Albeit Clementine said that Celtic supporting people told him that they believed that Rangers should have won. Incredible. But what actually happened was this. Ida puts it past Jack Butland after his defender stopped, claims offside, and it wasn't offside. It should have been followed up like all good strikers do, like Ida, the example, scored the goal that won us the Scottish Cup. And what a way to end the season. A double winning campaign. Celtic finished the story. They wrote their own story. And like Brendan Rodgers said, come back to me in May, 2 trophies later.
Aye, well, to be fair, it's nearly June now. We've got 10 minutes left to fit this in, so...
Has it been that bad? I've enjoyed it. What's going on?
Superb, James.
Yeah. No, the day in itself obviously was brilliant. I was at the game and I can't lie, mate. It was 2 teams flinging shite at each other for 90 minutes. We edged it in the first half without ever been spectacular. I'd probably say the same for them, to be honest, in the second half. And then obviously getting into the end we scored, and I must admit I was there with my wee cousin, and I didn't see it happening. That wasn't because they were particularly good. It was just it wasn't a great game. And then right at the end, obviously, as we said earlier, England's number 34 makes a mistake and loses a cup for his team. But no, it was brilliant, totally brilliant. They are the best ones. It was like the it was like the Frimpong Cup final where Frimpong gets sent off and Forster played out his skin. It still feels as if fucking injury time just finished last week. In that game, that was brilliant as well. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't the same circumstances, but just in terms of it was a bit out the blue for how the game was going. But no, absolutely fantastic day. And then we've had the meltdown since, and it'll continue over the summer as well. Or the yous were there for the taking again and again. We'll say the same thing. Well, why did you no take us then? But no, absolutely fantastic. And the perfect way to round off a season. And if you'd asked me, I wouldn't even say 6 months ago. If you'd asked me probably 3 or 4 months ago, after that Hearts game at Tynecastle, if I seen us winning a double, I would have thought you were off your nut. I did not see it coming, but fair play to the manager. As I say, in the last couple of months of the season, he stepped up to the plate, he earned his money, and he done what he said he'd do when he first came in. And I'll hand over to Ross with 8 minutes left in May, so he can.
I mean, funny enough, like James said, look, and your ma agrees, the way we won it is the sweetest way to win it. But let's be honest, the game was as fun as watching paint dry. Ross does that on a daily basis, to be fair. But in terms of the game itself, it was a dull affair. But look, I'll show you it again. This is what it resulted in. Scottish Cup winners, 2023-24. Double winning campaign, Ross. Unbelievable.
Aye, tremendous. The game itself.
So bad. Aye, that's tremendous.
Well, I don't really know what you asked me, but in terms of the game, I agree with James. It was low quality. It was Celtic did edge it in the first half. Didn't create a lot. They maybe could have had a pen. Listen, I see a lot of people saying that the handball was a Stonewall penalty, right?
That was a penalty kick.
Well, no, I'm not saying it wasn't. I've never said that. Not once. So argumentative.
Angry.
Angry. No. Listen. It probably is a penalty, just in the modern game.
Probably.
But if you're looking at what the game that we used to know, then it's not a penalty. Because I think the reason that the referee doesn't give it, right, is because if it travels all the way for the guy who plays it in and it hits his hand, it's a stonewaller. But I think he doesn't give it because Kyogo gets a touch in it. So then the distance it travels is really short. It's still a penalty when you look at the Awata one, when you look at the the Bernabei one, which is you probably can't include that because I think the penalty rule has changed this season, apart from the Awata one. It's the only one that I've seen given in that fashion. But for me, on a 15th look, I think the one on Kyogo, Balogun, and I think it's Balogun and Davies both come in, and I think he gives a corner at the time. It's Kyogo that touches it. Does he give a goal kick?
Yeah, it's a goal kick. He didn't get a corner at that time. It's a goal kick.
Right. Well, even worse then, right? Because he thinks Kyogo's touched it then. So if he thinks Kyogo's touched it, how's he not getting a penalty? Because Balogun's getting none of the ball. He's been through the back of Kyogo and made Kyogo put the ball out. So for me, that's more of a penalty. I never thought it instantly, but as I've said, 15, 16 looks, I'm like, every time I see it, it gets more and more of a penalty. So we're undone with that, and Rangers can make their case about the goal that was disallowed, we should have had a penalty. The goal was disallowed. Everybody who's an expert on the game, or so-called expert, have said that. James checking to see if it's Saturday. Everybody who's a so-called expert in the game has said, I think even Kenny Miller said, that it's a free kick in the goalkeeper. You can't put two hands on the back of a goalkeeper. And Rangers fans keep making the case. They're saying, oh, the Liam Scales one. Right, it was 100% a foul, right? But it's not going to go to VAR because it wasn't in the box, right? So it's a moot point. It's a mistake for the referee, but it's not a game-changing mistake. So it's not going to go to VAR. Rangers get the corner, the game goes on. It was outside the box. That's fine. We all accept it was a free kick, but it's by the by, right? So then they make the point, well, if you're getting a free kick on Joe Hart, then surely it's a penalty because Greg Taylor's all over Raskin. Well, it's not a penalty because
what
the
did you
ball's
say?
not in play. Raskin.
Oh, right.
Raskin. It's Raskin, isn't it? Whatever it is, right?
I don't know what you said.
Whatever it is, right? It's not a penalty, though, because it's two players grappling for territory, right? You could say Greg Taylor fouls him, but the ball's not in play. The corner hasn't been taken, so you can't give a penalty. The referee, if he sees it or he deems it a foul, if you like, but he can't give the foul because the ball's not in play. He'll do what referees always do in that instant. He'll blow the whistle, stop the play, bring the two players over, have a word with them, say, Greg Taylor, you're getting a bit heavy-handed there, you're a bit rough, stop that pulling and grabbing, let's go on with the game. And that's it. He can't give a penalty. But you've got Alan McCoist sitting in a studio, or in his house, I think it was, talking to Jeff Stelling on TalkSport. He's a pundit, an ex-football player. He should know the rules. And he's peddling this narrative unchallenged on national radio that the referees are inept or whatever it is, and they are. But he's using this instance to peddle that narrative and peddling the narrative that it should have been a penalty to Rangers. Well, I'm sorry, Ali, but you're quite a funny guy, but you obviously don't know the rules of football because that is, he can't give a penalty. It's plain and simple because the ball's not in play. So they can moan, they can whatever they want to do, but there was decisions went against Celtic, there was decisions went against Rangers. I've watched George Cadet scoring a perfectly good goal at Ibrox in the 90s. I've watched John Hartson scoring a perfectly good goal in a cup final. I think it was a League Cup final against Rangers, and it was taken away. Decisions go for you, decisions go against you. I've went through heartache. It's their turn. Ruined them. We are double winners.
Can I just ask, Ross, did he dump you or did you dump him? Because you've been left up all season. You've got to the last bit of the last podcast and slaughtered McCoist.
No, I've not been loved up. You've made that narrative. But aye, the mask slipped with that one. Like, definitely.
Right, so
I told you that.
Right. So, like always in these things, we've got a quiz, 40 questions. Right, we've had a fantastic podcast. Look, we'll end it with this. A wee bit of fun. Gav and McGinty and James brought this over from the Jungle James podcast. And I'll start with yourself, James. Simply, give me your baller and ball bag of the year and reasons why.
Well, one of them I've just mentioned there from my ball bag, Ali McCoist. Obvious reasons, as I say, fucking cheeky chappy, housewife's choice. But he's let the mask slip a couple of times this year, and I don't understand. Thankfully, Ross has seen the light now. But I don't get the love in with him, to be honest. Even his commentary shite. Second choice is Todd Cantwell. Again, no explanation needed. The fucking founder of the Shush Burger. Philip Clement coming in and making up his own leagues in his own cup and then proceeding to lose all of them. But my winner, ball bag of the year, it's got to be the man that doesn't believe in the January transfer window, to my top right there.
So it's Ross, is it?
That's the winner, right? I'll give Ross the honour before he returns it for me.
Right, so Ross is the ball bag. Then who's your baller of the year?
Well, again, there's a few for that. I'll get the two tap-ins out of the way easy that everybody's going to say Joe Hart and Matt O'Reilly.
Okay.
I've got to give a special wee mention to the best on earth, John Lundstrom. I think he deserves a wee shout for his part in the running. But look, the guy that I'm going to get to, he's took dogs abuse. He's come back to Celtic Park. We probably didn't expect to see him for a while. Some people thought it was all about the money for him, and it was all about the money at the time, whereas other people kind of stood by him and still believed in him. He's brought us some things, maybe we didn't want them all the time, but he's never let us down, and it's probably the biggest comeback, at least that I can remember, and I'm going to get it to Santa Claus.
Wow. Right, so we'll have Santa for baller of the year, and ball bag of the year is Ross. Ross, what about yourself? Who's your ball bag of the year and baller of the year?
By the way, I can't believe I've been called a ball bag. I'm not surprised in the slightest.
Just as well, Gav's known with a bottle of rum, it could have been much worse.
Aye, well, hold your horses.
I have a funny feeling who it may be.
So, my baller of the year is not going to be Gav. My baller of the year, you could say Matt O'Reilly, because for me he's been the best player in Scotland. But I'm going to give baller of the year. I can hold my hands up and admit when I'm wrong. And for me, Adam Ida comes in.
Oh.
No.
Okay,
Adam Ida comes in, and for me, he's been a complete game changer. He's not played for the start all the time, but he's given us that different option for Kyogo, and he's helped Kyogo because he needed help, and the team needed help, and he was lambasted when he came in, rightly or wrongly, and he's proved everybody wrong, including myself. He scored the big goals, and he scored the big goal that won us the cup and secured the double, which made a successful season, a really successful season. And I hope he does come back to the club and he does what he's been doing the last sort of 3-4 months. So for me, Adam Ida, baller of the year. And ball bag of the year, well, listen, James gave me the mantle, and James is very close, by the way. It's a real photo finish between him, Todd Cantwell, Philip Clement, but the man who outed me as the most annoying guy in the podcast when he was absolutely steaming boats on a Wednesday night, the baller of the year, Mr.
Ball
Gavin.
bag.
Ball bag of the year. I fucked it.
You fucked it.
Unlucky lad.
Start again. Quickly. Start again.
Aye, ball bag of the year is Gavin. I'm sure he's not a ball bag, but I didn't like his Wolverine beard either.
Look, no lad.
Nah, I'm only kidding. By the way, Gavin's a top-notch guy, and he's really good at hosting. He's brought a lot to. He's brought a lot to the podcast. He has brought a lot to the podcast, but for that, he is the ball bag of the year. Like,
see, to be fair, just on that, God fucking speed to whoever's on with Gav hosting next, because we've just went from May into June, so whoever's on next, you're in for a 25-day shot.
Well, look, your man came in and said you humped it, but look, I absolutely have loved tonight's podcast. I've had good crack. 3.5 3.5 hours in, we're still 82 live, which is fantastic. It stayed in and around that, and I do appreciate everyone watching along. Ross, I'll start with yourself. Have you enjoyed tonight?
It's been very tiring. It's been very exhausting. I wanted to punch fucking James twice. Your mom's been coming at me, but I've enjoyed it.
And James, what about yourself? What have you enjoyed tonight?
It's been great, mate. It's been great. Good laughing. I've wanted to jump up and give Ross a cuddle twice because I'm a lover, not a fighter. But it's been good. It's been a good.
What was that he was saying to you about being in the fetal position and spooning? I don't know, but he was very adamant before the podcast come on. I don't know.
That was you.
Paul McFarlane, well played. Troops to your Mad Top podcast, lads. Been in stitches. But look, that's the main thing. As long as everyone enjoyed it and had a good laugh with ourselves. I mean, what we're going to do, well, in terms of the next couple of weeks, we're probably going to take a 2-week break just to kind of recharge and get things organised for the next season. Then we'll probably be back mid-June. So we will. So keep an eye on that. But look, it's been a fantastic. Well, watching Scotland get humped, I'm sure that'll be exciting. But I mean, it's. But I've thoroughly enjoyed this season. It's been an up and down season, like Ross said. A lot of challenges in the way, a lot of good debates, a lot of fucking passionate discussions. I'm looking forward to getting stuck into all that again next season. And as I said, mid-June, we'll be back then. Just a 2-week break for ourselves, just to see what we're doing for the summer. Obviously, the January transfer window and covering Scotland, not January, the summer transfer window and covering Scotland in the Euros, which will be fun. And a few beers will be consumed along the way. But until then,
by the way, Steve, before we finish, can I just sum up the season?
No.
It went for the fart. It went for the fart to saying goodbye to Joe Hart.
Oh wow! Do you know? I was thinking in my mind, should I get that? Want me to get the fart video up?
No,
it's all good. It's all good. But look, everyone, good morning. By the way, as Paul McFarlane said, we're in the early hours on the morning, the 1st of June. To everybody who stayed with us tonight, stay well and keep safe. We'll be back soon. Hail, hail.